Okay.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Norfolk Planning Board. It is Thursday evening, May the 9th, 2013. It is now 7:45 p.m. Please be advised that this meeting may be and is being video and audio taped. This evening, we have a fairly light agenda in terms of the number of items. However, one of those items I think is going to occupy, I think, the vast majority of our time here this evening, the Pine Street Medical Building Site Plan, which we're very excited about. Looking forward to continuing that public hearing from our last meeting. The first item of business, however, was to discuss the request for lot releases associated with Fern Ridge Estates. So that business has been postponed at the request of the applicant. So we'll pick that up at a later date, which means that the first item of business this evening will be the review of the site plan and the special permit decision for Pine Street Medical Building. And I think it might make sense because one of the things that was, let's say, a little bit behind schedule, as is often the case, involved the design review board in terms of that interface with design review board and some of those details as far as landscaping and some of the subtle details in terms of the building and such. So it might be a good idea to focus on that and see if we can catch up, if you will, bring that to the same point that I believe we're at with many of the other issues associated with any project of this magnitude. So if the board is agreeable to that, we can start with that. And we also have, in addition to Bob Nicodemus, which I'm sure will engage in those discussions involving design review board, we also have Bob McGee here of the DPW, and I know he would like to also discuss some things which were kind of unfinished business, I think, at our meeting a few weeks ago. So we'll start with the design review board. So Bob, you were the appropriate person to come up and just update us?
Well, I think the applicant will do that. They made a presentation to us.
Get you a microphone, Bob.
They made a presentation to the design review board on Monday night, which was different than we believe had been presented to the planning board, both with some issues of building image and with some issues of site landscaping.
Is that on, Bob?
It's not on?
So
Yeah,
If,
it says on now.
so hopefully it's on.
take
Thumbs up.
it from the top, Bob. Take it from the top.
So we were here really to let the applicant represent what he presented to us to the planning board. We also have comments that, from that meeting on Monday night, reinforcing our general support and asking for some minor modifications, which we think are agreeable to the applicant, but once again, haven't yet been indicated on documents that we've seen.
Okay. So in terms of the rendition, the artist rendition, if you will, is that a good
That would be a good start,
document to
yes?
start? We'll put that up on the board and we can talk to some of the items. And
Yeah, my name is Chuck Giacchetto. Greg Pando, the architect, could not be here tonight. I think Canton,
We don't have many others. Let's.
he's on the Canton Planning Board, and I think they had a meeting tonight, so he had to be there.
Yes, thank you.
I'm going to talk a little bit about the building. There's only a couple of things that have really changed based on discussions with the design review board, one of which is we added a 4-foot parapet around the entire building. Not entire building, the three sides of the building. And the reason we did that is to eliminate the screen. This parapet goes up enough so you won't see the air conditioning units from any direction around this building. And so instead of having those white fence things that look like
Right.
just as bad as air conditioning units, matter of fact, we were just repositioning one in Middleborough. They're terrible. But so this 4-foot parapet, and then the height of the building and the way the roads are, there's no way you're going to see any air conditioning units. So that's I think a great improvement. You guys saw this picture, right?
We did. We actually have one copy.
And then the second part is this 2-story glass front. in terms of the way we're going to present the front of the building, and then adding this airlock entrance to the front of the building. This kind of gave a little more detail to the building itself. Again, I'm only speaking to the building. And, again, then even after further discussions, what we're going to do is we're going to add some of this white stone up on this corner and up on this corner that'll kind of tie it all together. We didn't have a chance from our meeting on Monday to today to get that into there, but we're going to take this white stone and run it right up this corner and right up this corner, so make a little solid and tie both pieces together. So the building itself, I don't think there's any issues. We all like the way it ended up. So I just wanted to talk to that before I turn it over to Paul. Any questions about that?
Yeah, what's the material for the parapet?
It's not really sure. It's made out of it's built out of steel studs in the back, and then they apply. I'm not sure. I can't tell you what it is.
I mean, is it a stone-like stone?
No, it's not stone. It's
Pine or
It's
something?
yes. It's like, I think it's like a fiberglass. You probably know better. Right.
Used to be called ephes in the history books.
We don't like EFS anymore.
I know.
It's not EFS. It'll be like a styrofoam or a something like that. They couldn't put it on the back side because, again, if you get a real big rainstorm, the drains can only take so much, so that the water will be able to drain off the back. But I think it actually adds a lot to the building. And it adds a little bit of the height to the building on appearance from the front to the top to the bottom to the top. But that's within the 45 feet that we're requesting the variance beyond the 40 feet.
So I guess the question would be, any other comments, questions, concerns relative to the building?
We're fine with
You're
what's
fine with
been
it?
discussed.
And where this is a continuation of public hearing, if there's any other.
Well, before we leave the building too quickly.
Yep.
Yes.
You had said something about your signs. Now, are you going to have some details on the signs for our decision, or is that going to be a separate issue?
That's going to be a separate issue. We'll be back in front of the boards when the sign guys catch up to the rest of us. What we intend to do is put some kind of sign on the building. I'm not even sure. So it will be on the building in the brick area, and then when Paul shows the site plan, you'll see where the pylon sign, that the outside pylon sign is going to be located.
So perhaps landscaping would be the next topic of discussion. I know there have been a few things that were raised by the design review board. Perhaps you've addressed them all, hopefully.
Hopefully, but I know we do still have some outstanding work. I'm not going to put words in the design review committee's mouths, because I think some of that decision was made after we last met. Perhaps there was some discussion in the parking lot that I'm not privy to after the meeting. But those changes which we made internal to the project was adding some white birch with decorative plantings around them. We also removed all the grass plots between the parking areas. The raised plots are now going to be landscaped with shrubs to make a break between the parking lots. So visually, there won't be so much pavement there.
Are they going to be wide enough so that if cars go over the curbing, that they're not going to start crushing the shrubs that you have in there?
They are. They're 4 feet wide, but more importantly, the spaces are, I think, 19 feet deep, so they don't need to get that close to them. I'm sure occasionally it will happen, but they don't really need to park that deep into the stall. We also added, for a visual break, groupings of arborvitaes 6 feet high. There are 3 in a group in between the shade trees to the front of the property. That generated a good deal of discussion with the board. I'm not sure that's the ultimate solution. I'm going to have to defer that to them to see how they wanted to treat that. We moved the sign, the monument sign, from the front of the lot to the intersection and surrounded it with a bed of annuals on a raised mounded bed. I know there was some suggestion of perhaps putting more screening along the side. There may be a suggestion by the Design Review Board to eliminate some of the shade trees in favor of conifer trees. I'm not sure just where they're coming down on that, but I'll let them express themselves on that.
Yeah, at our meeting on Monday night, the Design Review Board did discuss all of these things, and at the end of our meeting have created a memorandum which was sent to the Planning Board. And in it, we explicitly asked that there be some solid block tree, conifer is what we believe to be the name for it, to occur along the Pine Street facade areas, possibly substituting for some of the shade trees, that there be some conifer trees ideally occurring behind the Valley Street and Pine Street intersection where there is going to be a sign, and behind that sign, again, because of the substantial amount of parking that you will see coming down, just to block it a little more there. And we also thought that, and have recommended in our memoranda, that some conifer trees occur at the boundary line between the Rocco Plaza, South Street, Pine Street location, just at the corner, just again, to create another barrier so that we have a little more screening all year long. The shade trees, which are great and look very good, work 6-7 months a year, and they don't start creating any screening until they're 8 or 9 feet. So we're looking at tree trunks in there. We were looking for just a little more breakup that would give the parking lot a little more screening from the two major vistas, that being the Valley Pine Street intersection coming towards 1A, and the same from the 1A going down Pine Street. You would see trees and building, and that's what we think we, the Design Review Board, would recommend be provided.
So, the document that I think Mr. Nicodemus is referring to is this document dated May 7th. So, are you, as the developer, are you in agreement that these things are all acceptable? Because we would like to reference this, I think, tonight. We're going to have to reference some things that aren't yet in the plans, and we can refer to this in a comprehensive way if in fact.
I have not seen the document. I'd like to take a look at it, because if
You
we're
can have my copy.
if we're substituting shade trees with, pine trees, thank you, we're okay with it. One other issue I want to ask if they've addressed is the arborvitaes, that the dark clumps of 3 trees in the front. We had a conversation in the parking lot about those, and the arborvitaes, by the way, are the ones that are blocking your utilities in the back of this building, and they're awful trees.
They are. I was going to bring that up.
They're absolutely awful trees.
They split all the time in the winter.
Especially after this.
So, we talked about putting something, 4 or 5 feet tall, and we talked about the rhododendrons, maybe a rhododendron bushes instead of the arborvitaes, which would be, lower, but you can't, it would block out cars and you could see the building, and they would be green all year round. So those would be better than arborvitaes. So I'm not sure, is that addressed in the memo?
No, it wasn't, because we didn't go that far. We agree with the solid evergreen or all year round green shrub look at 6 feet high. Arborvitae was what was on the drawings. We didn't take the point of view of re-identifying species, but definitely rhododendron is a good concept species that could be substituted and work.
So I just want to make sure that that's added to that, because I
Okay.
absolutely hate the arborvitaes. Absolutely. The worst.
So if we put a footnote next to the word arborvitae and said,
Or equal.
should I reference rhododendron or suitable
Right.
alternative or something? I don't want to leave it too nebulous. I'm not sure that's a good idea either.
I think Michelle has something.
No, just or equal. Industry
You
term.
need something evergreen.
Well, they can do it for review and approval. They can come up with whatever idea they want and just give it to us and we'll say, oh, sure, that looks good.
Okay.
You may decide you want to put some holly out there or whatever.
Subject to planning board approval, okay. Okay. So we'll change that to say, or equivalent, subject to planning board approval, so a footnote next to the arborvitae. I think we understand the concern. I've got some arborvitae, and some of them did split this winter with the heavy snow burn.
I just want to talk briefly about the conifers they're referring to. Currently, these are oaks and maples that are alternating down the street. Any preference in terms of how you want to do that?
We were looking, not a strong preference, we just wanted to substitute, and we thought that some conifer trees in replacement of, I believe it was the oaks, which were the tan colored on the landscape plan, was the first thing we thought of as an alternative.
Okay.
Again, we're not directing the design, we're just asking for some substitution to meet the objective of providing more screening of the site parking.
So we're definitely not talking about white pine. We're talking about spruce or fir or something like that.
Yeah, the conifers that you have in the back area
Yeah.
there could in some cases work.
Sure.
We didn't want to get into specifying species unless that became a value. We really
You're not on,
wanted
Bob.
the issue to be
You're not
solved.
on.
We didn't want to get into the issue of specifying a species as opposed to the end result being a conifer tree that provides more screening of the high-density parking that's there. That's what we're trying to achieve. And so we weren't here to create the issue, just to recommend a program that we felt would mitigate some of that.
And you're only recommending it in a couple of locations, right? You're not saying to substitute half of the trees. You're just saying in that corner and that
Well,
corner.
the two corners and in several areas along Pine Street.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, essentially where all the orange dots are.
No, I don't think they're putting conifers out there.
That's what he's,
Yeah, I
that's what
know.
he's saying.
I think we want to be careful that we don't alternate them. They're going to look a bit odd if we do
Yeah,
that.
right.
We're gonna-
More random, yeah.
Yeah, and just be careful of sight distance at the driveways and on the
Right.
corner there.
Yeah, we can put some in here in the corner, this corner, and then we'll pick the middle aisles so we don't,
Well, the corner by the intersection may be problematic. It
And put
depends
your
on how you
signs
sight them.
yeah. Well, they're talking about putting some, maybe a cluster behind the sign or something of that nature, something smaller. We'll work something out.
Okay. So I think what we're saying is more or less consistent with this, with the language as far as the arborvitae alternative, and I think we can all,
The deer are going to
Up
miss
with some.
those. The deer will miss those arborvitaes.
yeah, I understand. Okay, so, Design Review Board, anything else that you would like to?
Our letter tried to identify those issues which we were requesting adjustments to what we had seen. The applicant's done a great job of listening to the issues and responding to them with good solutions, so we're just trying to put on record what we said at our meeting as recommendations.
Okay. Now, the other items that came up, which, I think we were close to consensus in terms of what made sense, but we weren't necessarily entirely there. And it involved the whole question of the crosswalks, the paths, where they should go, et cetera. So it is related to design review, but we have Bob McGee here this evening from our DPW department. So that's probably a good time to talk about Valley Street, anything related to sidewalks, water services, things of that nature, and I think that will essentially pull in this conversation as far as crosswalk and where the crosswalk should begin and end, as it traverses the site. So Bob, where would you like to begin in terms of any and all the above? What are your thoughts as far as the project?
The way I see, being familiar with the installation of Route 115 and knowing the intersection and the design that we did in that corner, and looking at the drawings, the layout in the property frontage, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of room at all to be squeezing a sidewalk in on Valley Street on the property side of this project. I'm thinking, I've been asked this, and I'm thinking, it's a sidewalk to where is kind of like what comes to my mind. I know that if you wanted to maybe perhaps go down a Hill Street with a sidewalk, there's just not a lot of residency. There's not a lot of foot traffic. I just don't see it. It's a quiet little historic village, not even, and I was thinking that perhaps, I understand that there's a project soon to come before us, proposing another building on the other side of the street, and maybe that would be a good opportunity to look at, maybe the construction done here, what it looks like, and if there is room for a sidewalk. Looking at this design, I mean, maybe you could put a sidewalk in, and almost like a Freedom Trail sidewalk, and wiggle it in on the private property side if you wanted to, and I really don't see the need for a sidewalk there. I don't see a lot of traffic, and
Yeah, well, and that's, I think your point about wiggling in the sidewalk on the private property, that's the crosswalk, if you will, that it is part of the plan. And maybe you could just review for us, refresh us all in terms of where it is now, based on the plan, the up-to-date plan. What do you have for the crosswalk through the facility?
Right now, it begins at our neighbor's property at the plaza, and we have a paved pedestrian walkway through the green buffer zone, and it follows along the northerly side of our traffic island into the next to the building, which you can go either direction around the building on sidewalks. You cross at the rear, and there's one additional segment that takes you out to Hill Street. We did some research surrounding the street layout in this area, and we already knew that the travelway abuts the property line right now. There's really not enough room for it to put it in the public way. But we looked across the street, and there's the stone wall across the street that you see is the property line, and to a large degree it's dilapidated, but what's left of it is the property line. There's enough room there to just barely squeeze the sidewalk in between the travelway and the stone wall, if that's what the town wanted. Unfortunately, there's really no room on our side because we can't get it in here. There's not much room for it.
Well, how wide is that roadway? Isn't it 40 feet or
I'm not sure what the layout is.
in Valley?
Unfortunately, it's a variable width, and it takes a hell of an effort to try to figure out exactly what it is. The travelway is only about 24 feet wide. It's not wide at all.
And there's no room on your side, so the other side must have.
You would think it would have a lot of room, but that stone wall is the property line.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with it? With the
I
property?
haven't seen the layout. I've seen the drawings given us here, but anytime you put a sidewalk in such tight parameters, you need a vertical curb. You just can't take a sidewalk and make it level with the street, so you gotta come up sharp with a vertical curb. There's no room for a loom border. So, I can't see it.
Because I think that we kind of came to the decision that the other side of Valley was probably the best place for a sidewalk. Because there will be development further down Valley. I mean, we know that they're thinking. we know that there's a potential of having some residential on Valley. So once the residential starts going in, it would be a good idea to have a sidewalk of some sort in this area.
It may. I mean, you could put a sidewalk in there for the 5 people that'll use it now, but you could be 20 years off what you're thinking here.
Well, maybe.
But later. I don't know.
Okay, so the other conversation that took place the last meeting involved some of the infrastructure for the water. There's a pretty sizable water line. Is it 8-inch?
Jeff, before we get to that, can I ask a question about the walkway?
Yeah, sure.
At the intersection of Rocco and also over in Valley Street, what's the width of that walkway?
Pedestrian.
Pedestrian walkway is 5 feet wide.
5 feet, okay.
ADA compliant.
So, in an emergency where the two main accesses were blocked, you could get a vehicle through there if you had to.
Emergency vehicles could go over the curbing and no problem.
But there's bushes and trees and all of that, so.
Well, right now, there really isn't. You could drive right through, yeah.
Yeah, that's what he's saying.
Well, we're about to put trees there. That's what I heard the design review board say.
Yeah, I think we're going to put them down in this area here.
Okay, thank you.
Is it relative to trees or sidewalks or sidewalks? Okay. Please,
We
Betsy,
gotta be
yes.
careful on what we're taking in with the hearing closed, that's all.
Well, it's a continuation.
No, it's not, we
Okay.
closed it.
Okay, go ahead.
What, am I
Is
allowed
it-
to?
Well, you had made some comments before
Okay.
about, you didn't feel as though sidewalks would
I'm
be
just-
used. You said it's
Right,
not,
I'm curious if there were a sidewalk put on the other side of Hill Street, and I know that stone wall, where, like, what would the purpose be for people at the medical building to take a walk up Hill Street? Or is it for townspeople to take, but Elizabeth Whitney Valley Street, I didn't identify myself. I'm curious as to what the purpose of that short sidewalk for people who would like it, what for?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I remember this is that we kicked it around back and forth, but in light of not only the off-site mitigation of bringing the 8-inch line down to Hill Street, as well as the practicality of the sidewalks walking all the way out to the corner versus cutting through, and I thought that's how we kind of left it.
And didn't even, the neighbor, what's his name? The owner of the neighboring property?
Al Quaglieri, Rocco's.
He also, it
he
was
also
in
said,
agreement
yeah.
and supportive of, if feasible, on the other side of Valley, that he felt that was a more appropriate place to put the sidewalk. So I thought we also put that issue to rest.
Yeah.
but-
And in light of the town meeting vote the past couple nights, where we just rezoned inside for residential, if that should develop and we have residential foot traffic, I think we can pick up the sidewalk issue at that time.
Well, if that development goes in across the street, then,
That's your opportunity.
yeah, that would be our opportunity to get a sidewalk down the other side.
But also, the misconception of you talked about the second proposed building, Al?
Yes,
He
yes.
basically has about 60 feet. He doesn't go in that far. Most of his frontage is actually out here on 150.
Right.
It's another house in here that is zone commercial that would really pick up that end. But as Betsy, the lone resident and acting mayor of Pondville, would tell you, that this is where we're gonna need it in the future.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I guess I totally agree with Al at the last meeting, referring to a sidewalk down further in the future. Absolutely, I'm fine with that. I thought we were focusing right now on putting wiggly one or whatever you called it, Bob. Must we have one? Where are we with that?
I mean, where would you be putting this, first of all? Oh, I'm
Which
lost.
one?
Wiggles, straights, anything?
I don't know of any wiggly sidewalk. I only know the one that goes from the parking lot out to across from Hill Street.
And that's what I thought we were gonna deal with.
Yeah,
Correct.
that's all I thought that we were talking about.
Okay,
I
so,
think Bob McGee is just presenting his opinion, which is really in agreement with where we have been at, which is that it
Right.
doesn't make a lot of sense. You could perhaps do it, but it may be kind of awkward. You'd be kind of squeezing it in there. So I think this is the first time we've heard from Bob on the complex, and I think what he's saying is his opinion, but it reinforces what the board's opinion is.
may I just point, I mean, this is really important to me. Can I just point to I don't want to do anything I'm not supposed to, but, so in other words, the planning board is not going to push having a sidewalk here.
Not
Well,
for
first
this
of all,
project,
that
not
site
for this
isn't even in
project.
front of us,
Yeah.
so.
All right, then
Well,
I've got
it
it
could still be
wrong.
part of
So
the
you're
mitigation. I mean, it
talking
could-
here,
Doesn't have to be
Yes.
on the same side of the road.
and, all right,
That we are,
so you're not proposing to disturb anything here?
right.
Oh.
Not
fine.
until that development starts on the other side of the
Okay,
street.
that's fine.
Okay.
That's just my I really needed that. Thank you.
Then it would be on the other side of the.
Right.
Good. Okay, so whether it's for the short term or the long term, the thinking, I believe, and so board members correct me, is that the crosswalk, I'll call it, the on-site walkway would be sufficient for what little person traffic, people traffic there is in that area. That would be sufficient for them to traverse the property and get over Rocco Plaza onto the sidewalk that exists on Route 115. I think that's what we're saying, without having to put themselves, if it's felt that it would be dangerous around the intersection of Valley and Pine Street, it can be
Right,
avoided.
thank you.
If in fact that's
I appreciate the
that's the case.
clarification. Thank you.
Okay.
And the walkway is going through an area of the parking lot that, or at least a significant part of the walkway is going through an area of the parking lot that's dedicated to employee parking, is that right?
That's on the left-hand side.
Right.
Well, I just
We expect to dedicate these spaces here to employee parking because there is the sidewalk there and the employees would be
Yeah.
aware of that.
So while we have you here, Bob, so we've talked about the roadway. It's narrow. It's not very conducive to sidewalk in that location. We can revisit it at a later date when the property across the way is developed. So, and we'll do that. So in terms of crosswalk, we've discussed that. The water infrastructure, the 8-inch water main, have those details been discussed, and is it on paper at this point, or?
I have I've waited for my consultant, because I need them to comment on the water and the, all the mechanical here. I have those comments now. Nobody's had a chance to see them. I got them yesterday finally. So, I don't know how much detail we can dive into here. I'd like to make sure that, you know, these comments are put on the plan set after they've been reviewed and argued back and forth. But a couple of concerns that may be worthy of talking about is, for instance, the base map that we studied here is, it shows the water inaccurately. It shows the water coming up Route 115, going through catch basins at some points. So I'd like to see that this plan set show the water where it belongs on Route 115. It does stub into Valley Street. And just talking briefly with Chuck, I think your plans are to bring it up to Hill Street with a hydrant, terminate it there. What we'd like to do is, we'd like to have that water join up and loop just past Old Pond Street. What you might or might not know is the water goes down Dedham Street near, is it the transport, Kessling, is it something like that? No,
No,
on
no.
Route 1A.
Transport, yeah.
1A.
You're right.
And it kind of stops there, but it does traverse, it goes across the street and it traverses between Transit Seed and it goes up to the end of Old Pond Street. It goes up the street a little bit, but it jogs behind a couple of houses, and it's not on any drawing except the ones that we have at our office. And it comes out to Valley Street, takes a left, and it goes down to the Roween property. What we'd like to do is see that water main extend on Valley Street where it's been stubbed with the 115 project. It's about 60 feet in or something like that. And go with an 8-inch ductile line main all the way up past Hill Street to where it can be looped. I thought that might be of interest to a medical building where it's about water quality. In a medical building, looping is a cleansing of water. It keeps the water moving, and when you have dead ends, such as we do in this part of town, this is where we're always doing our sampling, and if there's any hits or anything like that, it's down in that area. And for especially medical reasons, it would make great sense. It would make great sense for the town if we could loop that.
How many additional feet?
I have it in writing here. I've got a drawing of it here, but I'm thinking it may be another 600 feet or something like that. Normally, when with your proposal, I think what you're saying is that you'd like to come in, pick up from the stub on Valley Street, go up to Hill Street, and what we would require anyways is full pavement full pavement restoration, or if, depending on the condition of the street after you're done, we don't want to just leave it in a patch. It's going to have to be overlaid or something like that anyways. So it's maybe an opportunity where we can work together and we can collaborate to get this loop done. Good for the town, good for a medical building, and an opportunity for that. A few other things that are on here that I can tell you. It shows that there are 4 stubs going into, I guess that property was broken up into 4 different buildable properties. There's 4 service lines that need to be terminated unless you have some proposal for them. To terminate them, what you do is you dig down back to the main, you shut them off at the corp. We don't want to do that because of it's new pavement. But we would require the fee for that, and then that in the future would, when the street deteriorates somewhat and it's worthy of doing it, that money will be there to have that terminated back to the corp. There's some other mechanical comments in here that our consultants have, but really, that's about it of interest. It would only be fair to let these guys study it, and maybe we can converse back and forth, after they've really swallowed this. We can get on the phone, maybe even meet, at our water office and stuff like that, and talk out some of these details before the final decision, or it can be added to the decision before final approval. That's about all I can think about with the water right now.
It does present a bit of a dilemma because, we had approached tonight's meeting thinking that we might be able to vote on a decision of what we had hoped would be close enough, in terms of, reflecting all the details, and we could certainly put some caveats in there, some contingencies. So it sounds like you haven't had an opportunity to put this in one document that we could reference in the decision, correct? In terms of,
do you have the time to do it in this setting right now? It's unfair to you, and it's nobody's fault but our own.
I mean, what's the timetable for you folks in terms of, when you'd like to move ahead here? I mean, does this a couple more weeks, if that's what it takes to
We're trying to get
finalize these
into
details?
construction as soon as possible. We need this building closed in by winter. It's important, I think, at this time to just go over some of the histrionics of how we got where we are. Regarding the utilities, when we show utilities in the street, we do the best we can from with the gate valves that are available in the street and whatever record plans are available. So we show the water main, which is buried. We don't know where it is, as best we can on a plan. But clearly there is an 8-inch stub going across this intersection. And according to the record plans we've seen, there are 2 stubs servicing, 2 2-inch stubs servicing the property. Those, I would assume, were put in when this road was reconstructed recently. That was a guess on the part of the town in terms of what this property would need for services. Well, no one could foresee that one building would take all 6 of these parcels, and that's what happened. The building requires sprinklers and a very large water main. Not a 2-inch water main is useless in terms of sprinkler protection, so we needed a 6-inch main to service this building. I spoke with someone in the water department before we went ahead and did this, and I suggested that we take this 8-inch main and bring it down the edge of the roadway here and into our property, well short of Hill Street. We don't need to go that far with our main to do what we're doing. We would just come in the back side of the building right through here and go back down and connect at Pine Street. The suggestion was made to me by the representative at the water department that they would like to continue up to Hill Street. and put in a three-way gating arrangement here where ultimately the water could be continued up Hill Street and down Valley Street, and to put in a hydrant. At that time, we don't need that infrastructure, but at that time I suggested, well, perhaps we could work together on this, and the town provide the materials and we'll provide the labor. And that was agreed to. Not that the water department is in a position to make that deal. I'm not sure that they are, but that's the discussion that took place. So we already went from here to here, putting in the extra work, in the hydrant, at our own expense. And now we're being asked to double the length of and go down the street. That's a pretty significant expense with a water main that may run $100 a foot to install. So I'm not so sure we want to jump on board too quickly with this. It's an interesting suggestion, but it's going to take a good deal of discussion before we step up to the plate and do that kind of thing.
So, I mean, just point of fact, the extension of the water main to Hill Street would still be on the frontage. You have duality here in terms of the frontage, but it would be the Valley Street frontage. So it's consistent in terms of the location of the property here under development. So, where, in fact, the extension, or at least a part of the extension that Mr. McGee is proposing, would extend beyond the perimeter of the property in terms of frontage. So those could be worthy of consideration in terms of what the town can expect of the developer here in this particular case. I just put that out there as to whether or not that's important, because I'm just one person. I mean, I have my own opinion in terms of what's reasonable, but we as a board need to come together on this, and it requires some further deliberation perhaps to do that. Any other opinions on that?
I mean, we have a dead end right now, is that correct? So, my opinion, I agree, dead ends are not a great situation. It's where you're gonna find your problems. But I don't think we're making the situation any worse. I actually think, we're bringing it closer to being able to actually acquire the loop. We're not quite yet getting all the way there, but we are getting a lot closer than where we are now. So I think we're not making a bad situation any worse. We're potentially helping lay the infrastructure for even improving in the future. And I'd hate to hold up the progress of the project and incur such a huge cost when, the dead end isn't really the fault of, they're not creating the dead end situation. It does exist. I agree. The master plan to improve that and connect that, and maybe that's something with the town, we could work towards a master plan of filling in the rest of that loop. But I don't really think we should tie them up for it.
Jeff, I think, it's, we've made great progress not only on this, but in this entire district. This board's come together and, made necessary changes, bylaws, and waivers. I don't think that we should send out the message that, that we're just gonna dump it on every project. I think that we are so teed up in that area, and with the town backing the changes from a couple nights ago, that this is going to take care of itself. Not in this one swoop, Bob, but with the zoning for the multifamily just down the road, it's a matter of time before I think Hattigan's becomes a developed site. This is just going, and I just think it's only fair to anyone developing a site that they keep pulling it along. And that's kind of how it always works. So I echo Michelle's sentiment. In a perfect world, and endless money, sure, let's throw it all in. Sidewalks on both. But that's not realistic. That's all. And I think they're putting up a good project. I think they're working with all of us on all the issues. And, we're just that much closer, Bob, to looping it together. That's all.
I mentioned, I don't know if you heard everything that I was saying. Excuse me, thank you. What I was saying is that possibly we could collaborate with this. I would think if you had a medical building with things of the sterile nature, that you'd want, clean water. You're going to get clean water anyways, but it's just one little selling point. But maybe we could do something together while we're here. We could kick in a little ourselves. I think I said that in the way of collaboration.
Do you have Chapter 90 funds available for something like that? Oh, no,
this
that's
is,
water funds.
This is an enterprise account, and
Oh, that's right.
that's why, you know, I'd like to sit down and maybe see if we couldn't talk in the water office about something. This is a good project, and I'm not here to slow it down, stop it, or anything like that.
I wouldn't
Again, my
expect that.
apologies for coming in late with our comments. We needed our consultants for a project this size. I wasn't gonna take a shot at commenting on and making the wrong decisions here, so.
Bob, let me put this on the table. I mean, how about if they went to Hill Street entirely at their expense? I mean, they extended that line further, but that's the extent of it. And then you had the connections, you had the infrastructure you need. If the town can muster the funds, the resources, what have you, to work simultaneously to coincide, I don't know if there's some savings, you know, associated with that, you know, we would do that as a town. You know, we would collaborate with them and try to make the additional upgrades at the same time. Maybe that's what you have in mind, but, you know, rather than encumber the development any further, is that a reasonable thing to ask and for us to accept?
It is. It is. Like I said, I don't want to hold this project up, but I got to tell you, project this size, and you meet my foreman in a coffee shop and make decisions on that. That's, where did you meet him? You just surprised me with that. He's a employee, you know.
I called the water department. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I did not. One of the, there was a fireman who called me, and he happened to be in the water department office, and the two of them collaborated when we discussed this.
It's still,
Yeah.
you know, it's not the way to do business. You know, we have chain of command there and decision makers, and ultimately the board of selectmen. Not, like I said, just a guy thinking what he thinks he should say. You know?
He should run that.
Bob, I definitely will collaborate with you and see if we can put something together to help, you know, maybe my contractor does it all and becomes more cost effective. I'm in any way we can help in that regard. So, I mean, you and I will sit down before we get started on that part of it, without a doubt.
So in terms of the fire chief, his input, there's a memo dated April 2nd, 2013. It's item B. This is a two-page memo, and we discussed this at one of the prior meetings, but developer proposes extending water main north on Valley Street, terminating prior to Hill Street. Conversation with developer and DPW Water Division relate a fire hydrant and appurtenances will be provided. Cost determined between Water Division and developer. The extension of the water main is required for domestic and fire service to the building, but such extension represents a true enhancement to an area of the community lacking such fire protection. So it sounds like the chief, you know, was aware that some of these conversations had taken place. I mean, it's good that, you know, he's supportive. I think if we decided, and if you were comfortable with determination to go to Hill Street at the developer's expense, provide whatever connections, whatever, you know, hydrant facilities you're looking for, make sure the chief's interests are maintained. I mean, that might be a reasonable place to be. And then you would have sufficient time. You could actually take even more time to review the details in terms of how to move forward, as opposed to us delaying the decision because of this, and then now you're on a fast track, you gotta go. I'm just not sure that that's the preferable, you know.
I think I'd like to just insert, you know, pavement restoration. Because I'd like to. We just found $7 million in Route 115, still want a trench job up to Hill Street. But I don't want to hold the project up, and I trust that we can get together and work out the details.
Well, now that we've pretty much nailed it down, I think we've nailed it down, right? I just want to see in our decision, because we will be mentioning the water main. Now, where are you proposing it to end? Is it in the center line of Hill Street, and where does the hydrant go? Because if we reference it, we want to make sure that it's correct in our decision.
Water main extends all the way up to Hill Street,
The center line of Hill Street?
center line of Hill
Okay.
Street. We install a three-way gating arrangement with one section going to Hill Street and one section continuing on Valley Street. That'll have the hydrant on it.
Okay, and about how far is that? Do you have any idea what the distance would be for the hydrant?
I mean, the hydrant will be 10 feet beyond the gating arrangement.
Oh, okay, 10 feet beyond the gate,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And it, you know, the paved surface is on the property line practically, right, Bob? The paved edge is on the property line, so the hydrant's gonna be on your property?
Uh,
Hydrant on the other side of the street.
No, we're going to put a hydrant right here.
Right.
There's
That's
about a
right.
2-foot separation here between the edge of pavement and our property line. So we'll be putting it right on the property line.
Okay,
I thought it was going on the other side of the street. It really doesn't make a difference.
okay.
Where we position the water main, that's our decision. Center of the street or just off to the side us. We usually say the center of the street for drainage,
Access,
but
okay.
small detail.
Gino, are you capturing this? Because we're gonna wanna include this in the decision, reference to three-way gating arrangement with hydrant as specified by the DPW Water Division, something like that, in terms of, the pavement, comment that Bob had. So if you could just be, trying to capture this so we can reference it later, that'd be appreciated. Okay, anything else as far as water?
I don't think so.
Now, how about this question? Was there ever a question as far as water pumps and stuff to have sufficient pressure or anything like that? Or is that's all complete, right? Didn't that have to be done as part of the Joe Fran project?
That's a discussion the architect has been having with the fire chief. That's internal to the building
Right,
permit,
that's
so
right,
it's not
that-
really, it's separate from this process.
Okay, so let me read, it's actually here, it's item D. Discussions with developer and water division indicated the possible need for a fire pump to achieve pressure/flow of the fire sprinkler system. Developer will coordinate with fire and building departments relative to matter, along with working with the water department. Note, Joe Fran has a fire pump for fire protection at their facility installed several years ago after inspections found inadequate pressure/flow. So, I mean, that could be, and I'm not sure if you captured that in the decision, something like that, I mean, obviously.
It's
I
not
mean-
gonna change the site, I don't think.
Right,
if
I
they
don't think
put it
that,
in the,
you know, building detail really isn't
Yeah.
part of our.
But it's understood you can't get an occupancy permit unless
Right.
it's.
But it's
Still have to
also,
meet
you
the
know, it
code-
still has to be signed
code
off by building
requirement.
inspector and the fire chief. That part of, you know, the detail really isn't part of site plan review.
It's a part of the
Only if it
building,
was a
Yeah,
separate
it's
building
code.
or something.
it's a part of the building permit.
Yeah, it's code compliance.
Okay, good, that's a good thing. Okay. So I made many notes during the last meeting because we were even thinking about trying to make a determination at the last meeting, and then we decided there were just too many items. So, I think Gino has worked very hard to try to get these items reflected in a draft decision for us. So, I'll look to members of the board if we're ready to perhaps go through the draft decision.
Yeah,
That-
yeah.
Okay, so we'll do that. Tom, is there anything that you want to offer at this point, or we'll go through the draft decision and see?
No, Mr. Chairman, I think from the site plan point of view, we're pretty well set at this point, so.
What we doing, special permit or site plan?
Well, I think we're gonna go through.
Site plan
the
first?
site plan.
Okay. Betsy, do we have any other copies so these guys can take a look at it? Oh, do you have this?
Okay, where is?
Do you need a copy, Tom?
This is here, yeah, okay. Okay. So Gino, comfortable leading a discussion here of some of these items? I know there's a great number of items here.
Sure, starting with the waivers.
It's a good place to start.
Well, the first waiver is on impact studies and assessments. And that's usually granted in most projects unless it's some really large proposal. Same with the traffic study.
Okay.
Then the next waiver is on the sidewalks along the frontage, of which there was extensive discussion both last time and tonight. And so it mentions, the proposed language says that that requirement would be waived in lieu of, or in consideration of the applicant constructing pedestrian connections through the site and to the abutters.
It does say in there that it's going to be in a location that aligns with a future sidewalk on the south side of Hill Street. So when you look through this, was that taken into consideration when you were going over this site plan again? We wanted to make sure that the path that goes through your property lines up with the south side of Hill Street.
Yeah, we are.
Oh, okay.
We're right there at the intersection.
Driveway slopes, one of the driveway entrances slope toward the street. So, I mean, this is one that I wasn't 100% sure of, but it was a small area. And there's drainage in Pine Street. Maybe Tom might want to comment.
Or even Bob might want to comment.
Oh, that's right.
Well, we did a similar waiver right across the street at the
Exactly.
car wash because it's de minimis as far as drainage
We did it at
goes.
242 Dedham Street as well.
Right.
It's only the apron of the driveway,
Right.
just to the very entranceway. I mean, the curb cuts are already there. We have to work with what's there, so
Right.
that's all we could do with it.
Next one was soil testing. Testing was done, but not specifically in the area of the drainage basin. And if I recall from last meeting, I think it was acknowledged that the soil seems to be pretty consistent throughout the site, so. Next was slope granite curbing. They're proposing vertical concrete curbing, which seems to be an adequate substitute. Lighting, and on this one, I did make a mistake referring to a 20-foot height. They're actually proposing 25 feet and asking a waiver for that.
25 feet, is that the same height as what's over at Joffrey?
Joffran, they're different heights at Joffran. And funny you ask, because I did check on Joffran's decision, and theirs might be only 20. I can't remember. Maybe that's why I made the mistake on 20, but.
But I thought our photometric plan and everything else had already taken
Checked
this
out.
into account.
Absolutely.
So
The
if we're gonna,
the photometrics plan is based on them being 25 feet high.
you know, if we play around with the height now, we got a separate problem.
Yeah, well, I'm not concerned so much about the 25 foot. I just want to ask Bob, because we did discuss the light washing off the property across the roadway. And we were thinking that it might be an advantage as long as we make sure that it stops at the property line on the other side of the street. Do you have any problem with the light washing across the street?
I really don't. I know that was an issue with the school, and the building committee there had decided on the residential sides, they dropped the lighting down to 12 feet, just so it wouldn't shine in their windows and so forth. But that's
Different kind of
That's-
neighborhood.
We were
Right.
going to shield it or not shield it. I thought that's how it
I think they said
ultimately.
shielded so it stops at the
At the
property
property
line
line.
on the other
Right,
side.
so
of the
we
street.
had the flexibility of shielding it, but we wanted to clarify whether you wanted to own your
I
own
see
pole
no
or.
problem. It's all commercial
ride their
there as
light.
well.
When
And
that golf course is lit, there's plenty of light on the roadway down there.
Driving home
Yeah,
that
those-
way again?
I think those lights are 50 or 60 feet high. And lighting is the very next one. One of the light poles has a foot candle level of 6.5 above the 5, but it's just the one, and that was necessary to reach the corner of the site, and if I recall correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one was the 0.25 foot candles at the property line, and it was agreed to make that restriction to be on the property line across the street, but not on the site itself.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Front setback easement, requested to not require the 70-foot wide easement from the street right-of-way. And part of the reason for that was to accommodate a frontage road, which is no longer a requirement. And they provided the connections with the sidewalks and all that. Gee, the frontage road requirement, is that even, we need a waiver on that now? I guess we've better
Well, we
leave it in
talked
there.
about it,
Just-
yeah.
Filed
We
it
do.
under the old
Yeah,
zone.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay, then the conditions of approval. First one is the standard one, that they meet ADA. Second one pertains to the requirement, it kind of goes along with the waiver on the frontage road and it making the pedestrian connection, really the waiver on the sidewalk, and making the pedestrian connections. Instead of that, this just specifies that they will make those connections. And then number 3, similarly, the walkway would go through that north side of the island on that parking lot, so that parking would be employee-only parking. Stop signs were to be added at the 2 exits onto Pine Street. Screening around the transformer would be upgraded. I don't know if DRB is all okay with that now. Number 6 would change now because that pertained to the screening on the roof. Now that would be replaced by, I don't know if that we even need to include it. It's on the plans now. We need to make a reference to that plan as to the.
But the plan is part of the decision, and the parapet is on the plan, so therefore, it'd probably be cleaner just to dump it, wouldn't
Yeah,
Is
that's
that
what.
drawing part?
it? Well, the ultimate plan that we signed is gonna be,
We'll
haven't
have the
seen it.
parapet, yeah.
We haven't
Well,
seen it
we're
on
gonna
the-
reference.
We're not
we're
gonna have elevations, though,
Documents
when we,
submitted to DRB were dated May 1st, which are probably not documents you have a copy
No,
of.
we don't have any elevations in our set.
But it references the parapet in this May 7th document, which we're gonna reference this in the decision, so we'll pick it up here, right?
okay.
well, you could just say the rooftop equipment will be screened with a parapet, 4 feet
Yeah.
in height around 3 sides of the
Do that,
building, or
too.
something like that.
Yeah, that eliminates any uncertainty.
Okay.
As presented to the board at the meeting of the night.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next was color samples and dimensions to be provided to DRB, which I guess that was already done.
Mm-hmm.
So,
We didn't get that
Yeah,
far.
no colors,
oh,
so still to
We
be
looked
done.
we looked at a color image, but we haven't seen samples.
okay. So,
So we should leave that in.
okay.
Okay, and comment to the planning board prior to endorsement, so.
Yeah,
Should we say for review and approval in there?
Says for review and comment.
well, the ultimate approval is an endorsement.
well,
Steve, so-
We have at the top of the list, any changes require review and
Oh,
approval,
okay.
so. The plantings around the detention basin, white pines and spruce, is that still the plan?
They're actually white pine spruces.
Okay. And then 9 is what we talked about on the lighting, that it would be shielded to ensure it meets the 0.25 foot candle levels across the street.
Isn't that redundant? Waiver 8, but that's fine.
And 10, any other, I just kind of threw in any other recommendations from the first number 10. I guess I was prepared to erase it since the
Yeah.
next one is also number 10. Oh, then it goes to 9. Oh, my God.
Or maybe that number 10 could be referenced to this letter, from the design review board.
Reference the letter from the
Yeah,
DRB.
good-
Gino, you
good
don't
point.
start these fresh every time?
And you know what? I have to admit, I have a combination of automatic numbering and hand numbering, and
Drives you crazy.
it drives me crazy. It's right.
So Gino, so what are we doing? Are we making 10, 11? Is that what what are we doing?
No,
here?
10 is
The
10.
first
10
10
It's gonna be 10.
And then the next 10 will be
We'll
11.
refer to the
9
DRB
will be
letter.
12.
Okay, so the first 10 where it says any other recommendations from the design review board, you're gonna introduce the design review board letter?
Yes.
The
DRB letter, okay.
dated May 7th, okay.
Yeah, with our comments to it, which is
The footnote on the
Yep.
equivalency of
arborvitae.
equivalent to, yeah.
I think.
So where are we now?
We're on the
second
first
10.
one under miscellaneous.
I don't know if the letter's an appropriate place to reference it, but I think Tom's comment also about making sure the clustering of the trees does not restrict sightline visibility would be important, and I don't know if this is that letter may be the right,
Where is
Right
our
place or wrong place?
plantings?
so maybe when we're referencing arborvitae or equal, we also say and clustered in a manner so as not to restrict sightline visibility
On
from the driveways.
Mhm. Okay, so the first one under miscellaneous will now become number,
11.
well, for now, technically it'll be 10 because we left
Yeah.
6 in. We left
Yeah.
6 in. Yeah, so it'll be 11. And it's really, even though it's in this section, it's really a standard, dumpster pickup time, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., Monday through Saturday. And then number 9 will become number 12.
9.
The lights will be turned off at 11
Oh,
with,
there was a
with the
9 there.
flexibility
Oh,
that
I've
if
already
someone
lost
needs a
it.
later
Okay.
time, planning board could approve it. And then number 11 becomes number 13, which is just kind of a catch-all that other boards that may have conditions have to be complied with as well. And then if those result in changes to the plan, planning board has to review those.
Right.
Then we get to the general conditions. I
We
know-
don't have to go through all
Yeah, I
those.
was gonna say, I think I'll renumber them all.
Right. Okay, so reasons?
Reasons.
Okay, before we do that, so in terms of the details on the water, have we sufficiently covered that here? Because Bob also mentioned something in regard to including the pavement right all the way up to the top course. Is that what you're saying? What you're saying?
Yeah.
A little overlay. So
That should be
Would
under
we-
miscellaneous, the reference to the water line?
Yes, I would think so. Yeah. So that will be a 14, and then the general conditions will pick up from there.
okay, and you picked that language up, right? The water line, 8-inch water line, three-way gating arrangement with hydrant at
At the center,
Hill Street.
the gate at the center line and the hydrant 10 feet beyond on the property line between the pavement and the right, on the property line between the right-of-way. What, was that an 8-inch line, 8-inch
Yes.
water line? Okay.
And then would the pavement go in the same line?
Yeah, how should that be? What's customary in terms of?
Well, they have to get a street opening permit, so I think that's all done through the highway department, all that with the patches and everything.
So there's no need for us to state it, it'll just.
Well, I mean, before we get too far, because obviously, Chuck has stated that, he's more than willing to work with Bob on this, which I'm sure it'll work out well. But I don't want to get caught in a similar circumstance like we did up at Fern Ridge, and now Bob has nothing to back himself up, if things go south. Contracts only mean, and, a decision is a contract when things go bad. When they go great, they don't mean anything, okay? So Bob needs some protection put in there, and I'm sure that the applicants wouldn't have a problem putting it in necessarily. and we know what we're dealing with up on the other side of town.
Yeah, I
Yes.
mean, with Fern Ridge, at
Or
least we
what
have,
you're dealing
at least
with.
we have lot releases to help control the decision. We need some teeth, I think is
So you're
right.
saying you want to put the language in here?
I mean, I don't think it's gonna hurt anyone to put
No, I
that
don't
language.
think so. Tom, do you have, some suggestions for language, to include, make sure that it's all the work associated with the installation of the water main all the way up to the overlaying of the pavement and?
Yeah, well, the applicant shall install, and we said at their expense, an 8-inch diameter cement line, ductile iron water pipe extending from the existing stub at the edge of Pine Street to a point at the center line of, Hill Street, where a full diameter 3-valve connection shall be provided with a hydrant assembly located approximately 10 feet beyond the termination of the water main. And the area within which the water main is installed shall have an edge-to-edge hot mix asphalt overlay course.
Is that the way that you wanted it done, or did you want it done with a patch?
Ask the right guy the question.
Yeah, really.
I've been working on that all night, so.
Normally what you do is you install the water main, according to our specifications, you pack it all the way up. You can, as far as I'm concerned, just put a binder course flush, let it set for a while.
Let it set.
For a season, let it go through the cycle and so forth. Maintain that patch in a year later, or anytime, reasonable after that, just the curb over.
All right.
Curb-to-curb overlay to be installed at a date acceptable to the DPW.
Can I make a comment here?
Comment here, please. We've just added what was before, the town was providing the hydrant per our discussions with the fire chief. The town was providing the gate valves, and now we're providing the gate valves. Now we're providing the hydrant, and now we're repaving the road. You just added, $50,000 to the project. I mean, it's repaving the road. I've done a bunch of projects where we've gone into the street and we've done things in the street and we've offered to do things for the town. I've never had to repave a road in my 25 years doing this. So it's like we just added a bunch of money to the project.
Well, I think, what we try to do is, in some cases, we're saying that the sidewalk, which typically coincides with a project like this, we're saying, we're not gonna do that, and we're hearing that there's interest on behalf of some people that are very important to our town, and, that, we need to listen to, like Bob McGee, in terms of what his suggestion is, and we're trying to find a middle ground that, we can all agree on, and can enable us to move forward now rather than delay this project, because I'm afraid.
No,
if we can't
fully
rally
understand.
around this concept, I'm afraid it could delay the
My
project.
project in Quincy, I'm putting in a sidewalk. It's costing me $8,000 to put a sidewalk in. Now I'm putting a water line in, which we agreed to up front, and that's because that's the way Tom and I approach these things. We kind of start with a good project instead of something that, starts at one end looking to get pushed all the way to the middle. So I'm just saying, in this meeting, we just added 40 grand to the project.
Well, we have nothing in writing that says the town made an offer to pay for these things, so
No,
we
if you
can
read-
only
if-
say, like, what we know of.
Mr. McLean, if you read what the fire chief wrote, that's what the fire chief wrote, and that's what our, my personal discussions
Does the fire
with
chief
him
say the town's gonna
were,
pay for it?
and that was, and Paul had some discussions directly with those guys, and then he put it in writing from that point. So, I'm, again, I'm just telling you,
and
you
what I
just
would-
added
what I
40
would
grand to the
say,
project.
try to understand from our perspective. We're trying very hard to fast track this.
I
because
appreciate
this is
that.
This is a very good project for this
I
town.
I
okay?
appreciate that, but
And
no
I
other
think
town
we're gonna be
adds
very
that much
successful.
cost.
Together, we're gonna be very successful. I have no doubt in my mind. But when you fast track it, what happens is the time that otherwise Bob McGee and his people, his consultants, the time they may need, all of a sudden, it's not enough. So, rather than more thoroughly vet this and get all the granularity that we might otherwise get if we're, a month out from now, we're saying that we're gonna do the best we can with what we got, and that's what we're trying to do, so that we don't delay this project, because that's not good for you, it's not good for the town. So that's what we're trying to do.
I mean, it doesn't prohibit you from continuing to have conversations with Bob and trying to reach a mutual agreement on these parts of it, but otherwise we'd have to stall our decision and wait for you to have that agreement and work it all out. And if you don't, sort of like choose one or the other. If you want us to fast track it, we kind of have to go with what the requirements are.
The point is, when we're at the 11th hour, we've had multiple meetings, and now I'm finding out I have to repave a road. That's just, I think that's, I've never repaved a road in my entire career, never, in any other town. So I don't, if you're trying to promote business in this town, you can't ask the developers to rebuild your infrastructure. It's just not, in my opinion, it's just.
Well, we've had many developers
well,
repave roadways.
Well, I don't know how many you have here, but it's, the problem is we go into these deals and we have a rent structure and the numbers go together, and you're gonna get a certain amount of financing. And so what happens is, now all of a sudden you carry a contingency. Well, it's, the numbers don't work anymore, and that's the part that I'm struggling. I'm sitting here writing the numbers down on my paper here, and I'm saying, we're going.
Is that the one part of the verbiage that was proposed that's the sticking point, the overlay part?
The overlay part, I mean, the other stuff is, I'm.
It's a tough nut to swallow, but that's sort of the.
The overlay is like, normally what we do is, if you do that, you put the binder and you let it sit for the winter. I agree with that, because I hate paving over binder in the same season. And then you go back in the spring and you repave it. You pave up to the the other side. I mean, the finish.
There's nothing to stop us from modifying our decision. We're just making sure that we get it down. If you talk it over with them and you come to some other agreement, you can always just ask us to modify our decision.
Well, you know what, I'd like to ask a question. Bob, what's the status of Valley Street right now as far as the paving goes? Was Valley done under the TIP project, or the 115 project?
This was Valley wasn't done at all. There was a stub into Valley. That was,
Right, no, I'm talking about paving.
no, Valley hasn't been paved as part of that, not at all.
So, I mean, a curb-to-curb overlay on Valley, it's not like when we stopped putting gas main up Main Street from years ago because we just done the street over, and the gas companies by the legislature aren't required to,
Right.
pave. So I could see if we were digging into 115 right now, and it's all brand new, state paved road that we just, worked through. But where the existing, where the existing Valley Street isn't, a brand new job, I don't know. I think there should be some wiggle room or work room on this.
Yeah, I think I agree with Peter, and I think it's an extra burden on the developer to ask him to completely pave that street all the way up to Hill Street. I don't think that's reasonable. I think the reasonable compromise is to fill in the trench that's been cut and then come back in the spring and put the final coat on that trench. And even the hydrant and the valves and extra pipe or whatever, the only problem is that the conversation didn't include you. It was between the fire chief and
Thanks, chief. Yeah.
you know, whoever it was that
We
was.
buy the water apparatus. We buy all that. So the chief to say that, maybe just, not to cause dissension here, I get along very well with the chiefs. But I am a little bit surprised that he captured that in writing, because it had,
Well,
I'm the decision maker.
I just read that letter, if I read it correctly, Mr. Chairman, and it just doesn't say that the town would provide it. It just says that, if I get the right language here, conversation with developer and DPW Water Division relate a fire hydrant and appurtenances will be provided, cost determined between Water Division and developer. So it kind of left it open. That's the way I read it anyway.
And one of the things we have to, we have to be careful, because, it's basically the water is through an enterprise fund, right, and such, and, people that are on town water, we have people that aren't on town water, and, right, so correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, but you have to be very careful, right, in terms of ensuring that, he's not overburdening those people that depend on town water resources, and so he has to take that perspective to defend their interests, so that their rates aren't, escalating out of control. So, I mean, correct? I mean, isn't that part of the perspective you need to bring to?
Partially, yes. But just to go back with what Chuck was saying, I too have been in this business just as long. I've got 10 years in the city of Newton, 8 years with North Attleboro, 2 with Barnstable, and anytime you go down the street with a longitudinal trench, there's going to be some compromise, if not a complete overlay. We're not just talking about laterals, where you just put a trench batch in, you come back and you infrared it later or something like that. We're talking about a longitudinal trench. I certainly don't want to have anything to do with kiboshing this project. This doesn't come down to this, but nobody here should be surprised with a restoration fee, that's for sure. I'd be surprised if you didn't know that. You caught me off guard here with that comment, but truthfully, we don't want you digging our street. We don't want to stop the project, but streets break down when you dig them, when you dig into them. The first place that street's going to break down now is that water trench. So if you want to say here, to put it on the burden of the taxpayer to overlay that sooner than its life expectancy, I mean, but this is common practice to me. This is a restoration fee type of deal. It's a longitudinal trench. It's not just a little one going across the street. I think it's pretty standard in a lot of towns. I mean, if I had to lift the phone to prove that to you, I could, because I ran the show in a few places, so I know. So I'm sorry that they're caught by surprise with this, but it's simply, one concern, Walter, that you make a good point. There's a certain amount of depreciation on that street. For certain, it's not under the moratorium. It's probably 10 years old, 15 years old, I don't even know. But what I would be willing to do, and like I said, this is what we can do on the side, I can assist with this overlaying. I have equipment at my disposal. There's a lot of things that we can do together without deciding this, there's just no free, you know what I'm saying? There's more we can do
Yeah.
tomorrow,
Yeah.
somewhere else, talking like a couple of guys that know what we're talking about. And
So I guess I'll try to speak for the board that, I have 100% confidence in Bob McGee and his ability to work through those details with you, and that if we put the bar, here, that he's going to try to do what he can to, lower the bar through maybe some resources that we can provide. I mean, just, the town, whether it's this board, other boards, the DPW, just reacting as quickly as possible, in the context of time is money, I think can save you a lot of money in this project, by this town, showing that type of due diligence to move this thing forward. And I think we're all committed to do that.
again, I'd just like to save this conversation for where we can talk maybe next week or something like that.
I guess, how do we put language in that can capture this if the applicants so want it, because it's their deal? And also, if we need to come back, agree in advance that what we're talking about is a minor modification.
We could put that language right in that says if they come to an agreement with the highway superintendent, then they can come back for a minor
Because we're
modification
balancing
to
two
change
things
any
here
of these things, right?
tonight, Steve. Obviously, this, unforeseen, and this was a fast-track project, so, Bob, I cut short on it with town meeting, everything else, so it's not his fault. I do know for a fact, gentlemen, that, anyone that's ever had to deal with him at the table, all parties have walked away completely satisfied. So I'm pretty comfortable that you could probably work something out that will work. Then we also have to balance the idea that we want to get this decision done and hopefully voted on and filed as soon as possible. So we're balancing two things right now, and I guess we need some feedback from the applicant that will build in this conversation, but also predetermine the right to come back in as a minor modification and resolve it if we have to play referee.
Is that reasonable?
Yes.
All right. So that's what the language will be, that we'll write in here that if you have to come back because you've made an agreement, that it's a minor modification.
You got all that, Gino?
Good.
He'll watch the.
Like, Peter,
Did you repeat that?
No, can't.
okay, all right. So I think we're ready to, we'll give Gino a couple more seconds here to finish his notes.
Tom looks like he has a thought.
It's on your mind, Tom.
No, I was just thinking that if you wrote what we have, which is kind of making the applicant responsible for the water line and the pavement, and then say that, this is subject to negotiations with the DPW, and the applicant reserves the right to petition the board for a minor modification, should they consider the ultimate, should they consider the ultimate decision or whatever to be inequitable. It's awkward wording, but
How
where
about
I
I
was
just
going,
said to consider a minor modification relating to.
what I'm saying is spec it so it's the applicant's responsibility. Note that there's going to be negotiations, and recognize that the applicant can approach the board for a minor modification if they feel inequitably treated, I guess. Gino can work out the language, but that's the deal. Spec the whole thing, but pre-recognize that they may want to come back.
So what you're saying, if we're in agreement, we don't have to come back?
Exactly.
Perfect. I think that makes sense. So if we come to agreement, we're all set.
Right.
If Bob strong arms me, we'll be back.
Is that true? Even if it varies from what we have written in the decision, but they're in
I mean, but
agreement,
the
you
only
would have to
addition,
come
the
back?
only thing we're really dealing with on this particular issue is water line.
Right.
And we don't make decisions on what goes under the pavement, Bob does.
Right, but would we
So-
need it at least presented to us so that it could be recorded as, being a minor modification from the decision? So 5 years down the line, when someone says, why wasn't it done according to this, we could have record of saying, well, someone came back and it was a minor modification?
Oh, I think yes, right?
Yeah.
When you
So we'd
use the
still
word
need
minor
you to,
mo-
we'd
use
need
the word
somebody to
mod-
come back and
Yeah,
just say
minor
it was agreed
modification.
upon, and we'd
Yeah.
just say, yes, it's a minor
The,
modification.
the word
But this is-
modification
but-
has significance to the board.
Well,
That
then just
typically-
add some language like, and, any changes can be picked up on the as-built.
As-built would be fine, yeah.
And that way, we don't even have to come back, to, once again, reread this. Let's get the paperwork in place, and with the language necessary here in that paragraph, but hopefully with never the need to readdress it as a board.
Right.
I mean, I think the only thing that's at issue is payment of the pavement overlay. I think the applicant is willing to install the water line. So the only issue is,
Bob, why are you
Yeah.
bringing it back to us?
Let them work it out.
Yeah.
We just deflected that.
Yeah, we'll let them work it out. They can negotiate.
Yeah, I think you're right, but we'll leave it as the whole issue, and then there may be a better way to approach it. Maybe
Fine.
Bob will do some of the piping, and they'll do more of the asphalt paving, who knows? Okay.
So just to be clear, instead of minor modification, it'll be any change to be picked up on the as-built. But that's just,
Well, unless they feel it's inequitable.
No, because they may need to come back for minor modification.
Yeah.
So in the, I
How about
can't-
it just says any modification, must, meet the approval of the DPW/water department and be reflected in the as-built drawings. Period.
It's the sense of the board as discussed tonight that they regard the applicant approaching them as a minor modification. So that's part of the record of the minutes of the meeting here, so.
Okay.
There you go. Doesn't need to be in the decision.
Okay, so whenever you're ready, Gino, to continue.
Well, then we're back to the reasons for decision.
So that was 14, the whole bit about the,
Yep.
Yeah.
so you,
Yes.
you got something going in there. I was just gonna say water. Water and pavement. Okay. So then the general conditions, okay, we're there. General conditions, I mean, anything as far as general conditions anyone
I'm
is
trying to go
interested
through
in?
them as quickly as
Okay.
I can to see if
Okay.
there's anything.
Steve, those are boilerplate as they come.
Well, yeah, but sometimes there's a reference to
Yeah,
a
it's
different project.
It's happened.
Yeah, we asked for the site layout and lighting plan to be recorded. That's standard too, but, it's specific to each project as to which sheet and which plan gets recorded.
Okay, what about condition 218?
Yeah.
Number
Yeah,
20.
We're gonna start picking Gino apart, let's do it
No, he
all
has
the
to
way.
renumber all
What are you
of them.
becoming, Tom Houston?
it's the two got in there somehow. I think I started to change it to 20 or something. and-
Right, they all have to be renumbered.
Yeah. I mean, no, wait, the other 185 conditions are missing from here.
I'm sure they're in Tom's.
Was there a waiver that may not be required? Well, I don't know, in terms of the test pit for the roof recharge system. You talked
We did
about
have-
the,
We had that one.
so, okay, so that's for the,
Yes.
yeah, okay. Yep.
Are we on reasons?
Yeah, we are, I'm sorry, I just happened to notice that in my notes last time.
The reasons are practically boilerplate also.
There's only 6 of those.
Right. But they're, it's a permitted by right use. Oh, the first one is, does it protect adjoining premises against serious detrimental or offensive uses? And the reason is, it's, the C1 district is set up for this, and it's a by right use. And the design are in keeping with the surroundings. Convenience and safety of vehicular and pedestrian movement within the site in relation to the adjacent streets, property improvements. Again, it's all in the site, the layout of the site and the site design.
Can we just stop at
Oh,
that
sure.
one for 1 minute? One of the things that came up, I had brought it up at the last meeting, and we can discuss whether or not it should survive this process, was the planning board reserves the right to specify motor vehicle speed control. We said, I think the developer said that you'd like to go ahead and then see what the patterns are, what the issues are, if necessary, put some type of, I'm gonna say speed bumps, but they're not bumps anymore, they're the dots,
Traffic control.
rubberized.
Speed humps.
Humps.
So, is that something, because it coincides with that item here in the reasons, but is that
That
something
wouldn't
that
be a
should go?
that
No, it
wouldn't
wouldn't be a reason,
It'd
but
be a
should
They
it,
would go back to
should it go in
conditions.
the condition is the question. Is that type of thing normally in a condition, or?
I mean, inside a private parking lot?
We
I'm
don't
asking.
usually go back and look at things after the fact.
I mean,
don't
I
think
could-
we've ever-
I think the scale of the parking lot is small enough that it'd be
Right.
hard to build up a lot of
Okay.
If we were at the Natick collection, it might be an issue.
It's
but-
good enough for me. That's good enough for me.
Right.
Continue, Gino.
Okay, second reason, vehicular and pedestrian movement, which we basically just talked about. We added the stop signs. It's not in the decision, but, it's not in the reason, but, that's one of the things we did to make sure that the site design was safe. Adequacy of methods of disposal, sewage, refuse, and other wastes. Board of Health will have to approve a septic system. There's a dumpster appropriately screened. There's a stormwater management system designed appropriately. So those things are all met. Storage of fuel or vehicles and material, there is none, so that's taken care of. Emergency access and operations, it has multiple access points, and as pointed out, emergency vehicles can drive over the curb, so that's, and fire and police chiefs do not raise any access issues. And loading, unloading, parking is adequate. That's it.
On the chiefs, did we get a letter from the police chief?
Didn't see one.
We did not.
I don't recall, and he won't necessarily comment unless he feels it's something that he rises to the level of whether there's a concern, something like that, so that's how I would interpret that. Okay,
So that's that one.
so that is the site plan, and then the special permit.
Review and vote these
Do we want to
individually.
vote on this?
Yeah.
We can?
I make a motion that we approve the site plan application decision 2013-04 for the applicant Pine Street Medical Center LLC, located at, what is the,
55.
what number is the actual address on it? 31 Pine Street, Norfolk, Mass. Thank you, Tom.
With the modifications that we,
As discussed
Discussed.
at this meeting, yeah. Now, should we vote on the waivers before we vote on the site plan?
It's up to you, if you.
Because we have to do it by individual vote, right?
Yes,
We can do the whole thing at once
if you're
To
okay
add-
with it, yeah.
to approve all waivers.
Okay, so
just specifically say.
let's just amend this from the top. Site plan application decision 2013-04 for the Pine Street Medical Center located at 31 Pine Street, Norfolk, Mass. Subject to all revisions as discussed, including the approval of all waivers. How's that?
Yeah.
Second,
Further discussion?
just reference the date on the site plan decision, which is May 9th, 2015.
As amended. Thank you.
Okay, where this is the site plan and not the special permit, this is a simple majority vote.
Oh, no.
We have to have
It's still-
an individual vote because
Yes,
we have all the waivers.
because the
in
waivers
there.
are inclusive.
And it follows the,
But it's,
Yeah.
so it's a super majority because
Yes.
there's waivers, because we're doing it as one.
no, it's not
No.
because of waivers, it's
Because
because
our
the
site plan
site
requires
plan
it.
process requires the same procedure as a special permit.
Okay, okay.
Only in Norfolk.
Yeah, that's, we talked about that,
Everything's
didn't we?
special here.
Okay.
It's
So
not
this-
just Norfolk, but.
Okay, so,
Universe.
motion's been made, seconded, further discussion, hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Okay, Stephen McLean, aye.
Jeff Palumbo, aye.
Peter Chipman, aye.
Michelle Mayhew, aye.
And Walter Byron, aye.
He has to
Walter,
abstain.
yeah.
You have to abstain.
Appreciate the vote of confidence if you can.
We'll come back to you, we got plenty of
We'll
work
let
for
you
you.
vote, but it doesn't count.
So, okay, good. So I guess with that, we can continue now with the special permit?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Gino.
Okay. Under findings, A is simply that planning board has the authority to grant relief from the frontage road construction requirements. B, due to the location at the corner with Valley Street, there's only one potential connection for frontage road. And, just notes here that the pedestrian connection will be made, serving the same purpose as the frontage road. and then the special permit criteria have been met. Again, it's in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the bylaw because the pedestrian connection serves a similar purpose. The use is appropriate location and not detrimental to the neighborhood. It's the C1 district, it's a commercial corridor, and so the use fits in. Appropriate and adequate and appropriate facilities are provided. That's what we are just ensured on the site plan approval. It's not going to be detrimental or offensive, and no effects of lighting, odor, smoke, et cetera. Not even affected by the frontage road. Undue traffic congestion. Again, it doesn't, because of the pedestrian connection, anybody that would traverse between the two sites can walk across instead of it, so it doesn't have to go back out to Pine Street. And proper site plan has been filed, and it's in accordance with the master plan. And then really the only condition was that all the conditions of this site plan approval be followed, and this decision gets recorded at the registry.
Okay.
No issues there? Nope. Applicants? No? Okay.
Oh, yeah, please. You got a mic?
My only question is, the applicant will be revising documents based on this decision, and I assume those revised documents go to the planning board for endorsement. And the question will be, does the design review board have to review the changes that we have requested and send confirmation of acceptance?
Well, we can send whatever we get to the design review board, and you can always comment back. There's no reason why you can't.
So
Yeah, I mean, if you
we
need-
can always withhold endorsement, Bob, and pending your final review.
I mean, what we're trying to do is prepare ourselves to be ready to expedite this, and so I was expecting that revised documents based on tonight's meeting will be prepared, and we'll get a chance to look at them prior to endorsement.
Why don't we do this? Because we don't always know exactly what's happening when, we have these meetings, but then there's things that take place as far as plans and such that we're not always certain what's happening at any point in time. So when those are available, please, review them, and
Okay.
we'll wait to endorse until we get
Well, what I'm
an
trying to say
email or
is,
something from you. We'll wait to endorse.
yeah, what I'm trying to say is the design review board needs to know when the changes have been submitted so we can act. And that's why I'm just
Okay.
commenting on that.
So, I mean,
So Betsy, you can contact them, right?
You can,
Yeah.
yeah, Betsy can manage that.
Yeah, I'm sure Paul has Bob's contact info anyways, do you?
We go through Betsy. She
Oh, okay.
handles them to you.
All right,
Yeah, that's good.
that's fine.
That's the way it should be. That's good. Keep her busy.
Yeah, she's not busy enough.
Right. Okay. So, there's the plan.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I will make a motion to grant the special permit for decision number 2013-05.
Dated.
Dated.
Oh, sorry,
Michelle
dated May
Carter
9th,
signed.
2013.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded, and this is a supermajority vote required. So I guess this would be a roll call vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye, Stephen McLean, aye.
Jeff Palumbo, aye.
Peter Chipman Grant.
Michelle Mayhew, aye. Grant.
Okay, the special permit has been granted.
Walter has to abstain.
Walter, you want to throw one in?
No, I'll sit back and properly admonished.
Okay. Any other item of business relative to this project, I guess, at this point? Anything
Just one comment.
procedurally we need to talk about? Yeah. Yeah, please. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. This board has been, and this town's been very helpful to get this process through quickly so we can get this building started and hopefully weather tight before the winter comes. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
We look forward to working with you folks. Thank you.
Well, to let DRB know how long it might be before they get to see it, do you have any idea when your revised plans might come in?
I'm thinking 2 weeks. I'm gonna need to sit down with Tom and make sure that it's what he's looking for. We'll make the revisions, we'll go through him, and then we'll resubmit to the town.
All right, thanks.
Okay.
But, I mean, that's not really a sensitivity issue now that they can file the decision, so at least that clock starts ticking. So we're progressing, even if it's a couple weeks, so.
If we can help with anything, just
You can make the revisions for me.
You wouldn't want to see
I
it.
don't want to do that.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to see our revisions.
I get my T-square out on those plans.
I could help you, but you may not be able to afford me.
I keep getting people to plant ginkgo around. I'd put some ginkgo on this site plan.
Okay.
This is great.
Yeah, thank you again.
Thanks for coming to town,
Thanks
guys.
for your time.
Do we want to try to schedule it so that we
Bob?
we get
Schedule
back?
the endorsement?
Jeff,
Well, so that
Bob, any questions?
Betsy,
Good night, guys.
thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Appreciate it.
I know, I was just gonna say that to you.
Good for you.
Well, what about
Thanks-
those
thanks for
people
the
that like to
support.
cut through there? Is that you? No.
Any Genos around either.
She's proud of her.
Bye, Betsy. Yeah.
The DRB has one other question, and that is at this moment, the status of 242 Dedham Street, where we had requested a series of documents and information, and we don't know whether that's gone forward or not. We haven't been notified that the revisions have occurred, and we're, quote, asking the same question relative to 242 Dedham Street. What is its status, and will we see the revised drawings before there's a fully endorsed document package?
I'm not aware of the planning board having communicated with those folks since we approved their plan, right? I mean, we've approved.
They're working on the plans for endorsement, so once I get.
Okay, well, again, what I'm saying is
Yeah.
before you endorse them,
Yeah.
we would like
Oh,
to be
yeah.
notified so we can look at it.
Absolutely,
Because
absolutely.
we want to make sure that the issues we raised are indicated on the documents that you sign.
And I'm gonna hold Betsy responsible for, she's not even gonna hand the pens out, there's special markers that we get, so she's gonna hold them.
Electronic version, or?
That's fine, I just, we know that there's a half a dozen things that we requested and we haven't heard what's going to happen, and so that's how I wanted to leave it.
No, fair enough, I mean, you folks put all that time in, I mean, that's a reasonable request. Thanks, Bob, appreciate all your efforts. Okay, maybe we can get Walter more involved here in this process. Okay,
Journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step, right?
that's right. Okay, so I guess, with that, and now we're getting into new business, and, we're gonna be talking about the organization of the board and such. It's, we have another item ahead of that, but, and I apologize, I was remiss in, failing to welcome you to the board, Walter. I mean, you're no stranger to those of us who participate in boards and committees. I mean, you're involved in the Economic Development Committee, and you've been very visible, very active in, things taking place in the town and the town meeting. So, I know I share my colleagues' support here and enthusiasm having you as a member.
Well, thank you,
So
Jeff.
welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So there is an item of business you may not be too familiar with, involving the bond at Stop and Shop and some of the remaining work, work to complete, and, Bob McGee is here this evening. This is something that's come up now a few times over the past, year and a half. So, there's a bond in place, surety for the town, and that surety is in place because there's some work that still needs to be completed in town center. And a significant portion of the work involves so-called crosswalks. There's crosswalks that have yet to be installed that were part of the plan that was approved several years ago now. And so that particular item has been a dilemma, a bit of a dilemma for the town, and I know Bob has been working hard to try to deal with it. We're faced with a scenario where the material of construction that was specified in the original plans, the brick that has been used, and we see it in other places in the town, it's become evident that that brick is just not durable enough for at least this part of the country. Bob and his guys, they've tried to use asphalt to patch the brick to avoid a broken ankle type of situation. So he's been chasing it like that. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to make the mistake of specifying the same material of construction going forward. And that's where we have a bit of a dilemma, because the materials of construction that we may be more comfortable with are going to be more expensive. So it's going to be a point of negotiation with Stop and Shop. And we can certainly have those discussions and negotiations, and I think, I'll speak for myself, I would really like to do that and try to deal with this outstanding bond sooner rather than later, because, some of these bonds eventually, they elapse. I mean, I'm not sure all the details with this particular bond, but if we're not careful, I mean, we could, create even more problems for ourselves here. We need to show due diligence that we're trying to, close this business out with Stop and Shop. So Bob has identified some materials of construction, some flat cobblestone, which, you see in Europe how some of these things hold up, and so the thinking was that might have some merit, in terms of long-term durability, but it may not be the panacea either. And Bob has struggled to try to find other communities that have used it, and I'll let him speak, but he hasn't really been able to find, any case studies which are, to give him a high degree of confidence that it's going to give us everything we want, not just the durability, but there's some other parameters that he's more equipped than I am to discuss. So there's the crosswalks. There's also some things relative to the existing sidewalks that need to be dealt with, and we actually spent quite some time, Bob McGee, myself, Tom Houston, on the sidewalk last summer, looking at where there were some issues that needed to be dealt with and trying to outline those. In fact, they were outlined, those items, a punch list, if you will, that PSC put together, Tom Houston put together. So, so we have, that information, that perspective, and more recently, PSC has done a cost to complete, and maybe those things are in that cost to complete, Tom, some of those things that we had seen when we went out on the sidewalk looking at, the present situation at that point in time, at least the state of the sidewalk and infrastructure out there. So, I guess, with that, is there anything that you want to add before maybe we turn it over to Bob and just see what his latest comments are in terms of the crosswalks?
Well, just to put the costs in an order of magnitude, the total work is about $120,000, and about $50,000 of that is for 5 crosswalks. That would be using the design that was approved on the drawing, which is the brick that hasn't worked out. So, other than that, no.
Okay, Bob.
How many sidewalks was that?
5. Crosswalks, actually.
Crosswalks, right. Sorry.
Oh, why don't you join us?
Yeah, it's a good idea. You want to come up and?
Hold the mic.
because definitely would like to just hear from you in terms of what your latest thoughts are, because, I mean, I actually sat down with Stop and Shop along with, Tom Houston last year. And it makes it more difficult if we don't know what we want to negotiate with those folks.
Right.
I mean, they had an attorney from Boston, and he's doing his job, trying to advocate for his client, and we did what we felt necessary to advocate for the town. So the sooner we can wrap our minds around some material of construction, and quite frankly, if it's slightly more, expensive, then, that's something that Stop and Shop, they may not agree to it, but we can then have that conversation in terms of the delta, and what to do about that. But what are your thoughts, Bob, at this point?
Well, more than just what's owed to us for work out there, what's been approved. We know now, and you cleverly pointed out, it's just an inferior product. To go ahead and allow anybody to put down brick just to know that it's going to fall apart like the rest of the town is senseless. My feeling is that we can't do this a third time. In other words, we had a beautiful downtown. The bricks are starting to fall apart. It just can't hold up with the New England down pressure of plows and the salt and so forth, and the banging and the cold and the frost and the thaw. And on top of it all, it was spec'd out as a concrete brick. Maybe that's good. Maybe it's worse than clay. I just don't know. Either one's not going to work. What I mean by we can't get it wrong a third time is whatever we do now, we got to get it right now. Because 5 years from now, if I'm still on the payroll and I won't be for 6 years. But so we got to do it right now. And if it means that we're going to have a crosswalk and keep the charm of this town the way it is and so forth, what I did was I went around. I've talked to Tom. I've went to other towns. I saw all the different applications. We can put down a thermoplastic. We can put down a stamped asphalt that has color pigment in it. We can put down a concrete stamp. Concrete has a cobble look, or it could have a scallop look, anything you want to do for decorative. We could just pave through it and paint it. Some towns just write paint crosswalks. But if you look at the different applications that I've seen in all the different towns, I haven't seen one successful application. Not one. In Westwood, I have seen
any material of construction or specific material of construction.
Go ahead, Walt.
Well, I'm just thinking about Boston, they use the City Hall paver all over the city, which is a clay brick impervious to water. It's the one that started out being the brick for the City Hall Plaza. And those I see them in crosswalks and sidewalks and all kinds of things.
But not on the street. That's all we're talking about.
I understand,
you can't take the street. The garbage trucks, the dump trucks, the cement trucks, the plows. These are all landscape architect designs, and they're up and off the street. You might find them in like the town halls where there's very little traffic and stuff like that, and on the private properties.
I'll accept that. I've seen them on the street, I think, but I couldn't swear to it. But anyway, go ahead.
You could be right too, and that's maybe the ones that I haven't noticed myself. But the thermoplastic seems to be a cheap way out, a cheaper way out. It looks good. It seemed to have stood up in Westwood. If you go down Route 109, which has all the traffic you ever want, that's a great test example. But go over to Canton. In Canton, it's cracked. It looks like it's lipstick in color. It's cracked. They're coming back to do it again. So if we don't hit it right in 11 different locations, and now that we add what you have going on up here, some might work and some might not. If you use a stamped asphalt, the wear of the tires go through, and 3 years later, it looks great here where the tires don't go, and then it's just grooved out and the pigment's gone. That's no good. You can't use concrete because I think we all know the concrete in winters, salt doesn't. Look at our sidewalks out here. Just the salt that we put on the street that splashes onto the sidewalk from the windrows when it melts, the salt hits that. You see the pigmentation of this finished product out here is all pocked. So salt and concrete don't go together unless you're on top of it and you clean the snow, or if you don't use salt at all and you come and you treat it every summer. You you know, it'll chase the money, it just isn't worth it. And so the only thing I can think of what's ever stood up in Europe and in the cities of Boston for hundreds of years is cobblestones. So if you want to go with a decorative look and so forth, it's going to cost more. My figures here are for a new one. I think, Tom, you came up with close to $10,000, $9,000 to replace the brick, to replace what's there existing now, according to these figures here.
Yeah,
Close to it.
the cost of the brick pavers, we set at $8,600.
8,600.
The
And then
crosswalk's a little different in size, it varies a little bit.
But, Bob, can I back
Yeah.
up a little? And this isn't anything new for at least a few of us on the board. We have addressed this many times. And I guess it sounds like, because you're right, I think 3 years of traffic here would equal a year of traffic on 109 or even less. It sounds like it was an installation issue in Canton, because that product is good, and I drive by it every day.
Westwood?
In Westwood.
Yeah.
So, I mean, do you think it might have just been a poor installation issue in Canton?
Well, there's other towns too that it's cracked through.
Is it always the same product? And then there's probably more than one company
Well,
now.
thermoplastic is, the process is that you pave the street through, pretend that nothing's gonna happen there. Then you come back and, you know, you grind out like a half an inch, because
Right.
that's all the thermoplastic is. Then they come and they put it in, they install it, and they stamp it, and they heat it, and so forth. And if that subsurface isn't perfect, it's, you know, if you're not lucky enough to get it perfect, it's gonna crack. It doesn't crack along the joints. When you do concrete, you have expansion joints and you have control joints. Concrete is gonna crack, like it or not, it's gonna
Right.
crack. So what you do is you tell it where to crack. Thermoplastic has joints, but they're just picture-perfect joints. They don't have any structural, there's no reason for it. It's just to look good and imitate something that it isn't. So the crack's gonna go around it, go through it, and it's unsightly. And
Is the Westwood product possibly a thicker product?
we entertained, I had Peter Marino out here, who's, probably the leading contender for all these thermoplastic installations, and he'll even admit to you that, you just gotta have that great surface, and they struck gold over there. Maybe I don't know what they did underneath there, but I don't wanna be wrong again,
Because the only thing cobble's beautiful, okay, and
Yeah.
storable. But are we gonna have ADA issues?
I
Well,
heard
it's
that
flat
could be.
cobble, isn't it? It's not the,
Yeah, I'm not gonna, it's not gonna be the horse-worn
Okay.
type of cobbles where it's also slippery and so forth. But before I made the investment, I'd make the phone call too.
Okay.
Yeah, he had brought some samples in, and they were pretty flat, but you're right, until you put them together and you really
Yeah.
get a sense for that. But the other thing I would add is that, in terms of the thermoplastic, like Peter said, was it installed the same way? What are the other differences? But if there's different companies now or different grades of this thermoplastic, if you take plastic and you put minerals in there, you can improve the strength of the polymer. You can put UV additives so that it can withstand exposure to sunlight and last longer. And there's things that I don't know if there's just one thermoplastic or if there's different suppliers and different grades. And maybe that's part of it too. Maybe. I don't know.
I guess the point is this: we have gone through this endless amounts of time, and to be honest with you, I think, I don't want to speak for anyone else here, but I think we, as a board, we said, Bob, ultimately it's your call. You got to make it.
This is about the only challenge that I want to walk away from. I swear to God.
Well, basically, here's what Stop and Shop did in the discussions that we had. You were there,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So basically, they said, "Oh, thermoplastic. How many sidewalks?" And they were quick to calculate thermoplastic, and that's what they wanted to either do, or what they wanted to provide the town for proceeds. They would probably accept, that as an alternative to actually installing the thermoplastic. And we didn't feel that was an acceptable outcome. And in fact, if we rally around the cobble, there's no way, no how should we agree to anything less than what the cost of the brick would have been had it
Right.
been installed. I think we all agree on that. Whether or not they'll agree to more, doubtful, but they might, I don't know. And then there's other options. If it costs more, could we eliminate one of the, permanently installed sidewalks? You know, you're doing, if it's 5, do 4 cobble and 1 will be painted. At this point in the life cycle here of our town center, you know, maybe there's other ways to deal with the shortfall if it is a more expensive option, which I think you know it is.
You know, Stop and Shop owns this area, okay? They don't own the grocery market site, a different entity. They're a tenant there. Are any of the the sidewalks involved up by that?
Question again?
Are any of the sidewalks,
Crosswalks.
excuse me, not sidewalks,
One
cross?
of the new ones is up by the Stop and Shop sort of roundabout.
Oh, is there
Okay.
one installed already?
No. Is there one in play still
Yes.
for that? So therefore, they also have expired permits. That could be part of a site plan approval if it's ever resubmitted. And in the interim, if we feel the need to, paint it. Let's put it down here where we see it, where we use it, and we do a,
Good thinking.
a combination of what you just said. And so if we can get an economy of scale there, I know it's just one. Is there any other spots that we can kind of pull this off, for lack of a better term, Tom?
Well, the 3 critical ones are at Meeting House and Liberty Lane. That they go across Meeting House and then once and then twice across Liberty Lane. The one up at Stop and Shop, and I'm hard pressed to think of where the other one is right now.
I do have a drawing.
Is not one right out here?
I think everything
That's
out
already
here is
there.
already installed.
It's in terrible, we threw in a repair cost for that. But,
Okay.
Better view down on this.
Oh, there's 4 at Meeting House, Liberty Lane.
Oh, really?
There's 4?
You got, because one crosses Meeting House on the Walgreens side. Or on the retail side, right here,
Oh,
1, 2, 3,
that's
4.
that's the sidewalk crossing a driveway, isn't it?
No, it's shown as, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, no, that's right, yeah.
I think we had that conversation.
Like here, like this bottom one. How crucial is that?
That,
Sorry.
we didn't want to put brick in there so the construction equipment could go through it.
2, 3.
And then when it was fully developed, go back to the brick.
Don't need that. Don't need that.
Right, I would have thought that would just be sidewalk material. That would be concrete, wouldn't it? Because you wouldn't want to change the
Right.
sidewalk. Cement concrete.
So now we're losing 2.
We're down to 1, 2, 3. Or, what's this one?
That's a driveway. That's another driveway entrance.
Yeah, I think what we're trying to do is to look at where we are at Town Center and what do we really need right now. And I think,
That's the only place.
we take a clean sheet of paper, look at that, which is what we're doing, and then contrast that with the decision and the plans and the agreement.
Right. Well, I
with
mean,
that
I
was-
guess here's the thing, and I think we brought this up last time we talked about this, and maybe the time before, Tom, Jeff, Bob. They're not willing to just give us a check for what the cost of complete is?
We need to be very clear with them, because if you take the original plan that was approved, we need to be able to justify, okay, there's X number of crosswalks that have not been installed, that need to be installed, okay?
Right,
based on
but
the-
Tom has quantified this, okay? We have a number,
120.
okay? That's what, write us a check, go away, we'll deal with it.
So basically, what the tack that they're taking is that they're willing to do the work, to contract the work. What work do you want done? So that's where you get into, okay, how many crosswalks is it? And that's where, they're talking about the
See-
thermoplastic. So we, Peter, you bring up a good point, and we may be able to get around it, but it makes it much more difficult if we don't know what we're doing in terms of material of construction. That's a whole lot easier negotiation to orchestrate if we know what we want.
Well, I think it's almost like playing the, you know, the car dealer game here. You know, we're getting caught up in the minutia rather than the overall dollar amounts. And we rely heavily on cost of completes all the time with Tom and with Bob. All right? I'm assuming Dave did this right. Okay? So why can't we just negotiate for a check and walk away rather than get caught up in the minutia?
Okay,
Sounds
so.
like they don't want to.
Okay, so this is exactly what we did last year, right, Tom? We had cost to complete, and we put it in front of them. We said, this is what we need from Stop and Shop. And that led to a discussion about thermoplastic, and maybe it's because there was
Well, who
some
brought it up?
conversation. We certainly didn't want to talk
Did the
about
cost to complete reflect thermoplastic or reflect the,
No, it didn't
Drawing.
reflect the
It reflected
thermoplastic.
the-
approved plans.
A year ago, I don't recall, but what this cost complete is based upon is the approved subdivision plan.
Which is what they're on the hook for.
Yeah.
And we want to do it. You
So-
guys took too long. Give us a check.
Okay.
Next one that talks
And
loses.
if they waffle on the amount, then the next conversation is, what I think we need to be prepared for is what do we actually want? Okay, in terms
So
of what the
could
material
you-
of construction is, and then we move forward, because I think they know, I think you understand the situation. They're not willing to just write us a check for what we say the cost to complete is. They wanna know the details, and they wanna buy off in terms of
well,
the
if we,
details, and they're willing to actually do the work, contract the work themselves. They probably feel as though they have a scale and such, working with their.
Well, they
Well, wait a
have to
second,
do
then
the
let's
work.
bring up one
It's
other
their-
issue here.
It's their land.
So you have to tell them what to do.
well, why don't you
Yeah,
let them
that's right.
negotiate?
It's their land.
Why don't you
We
let-
can't go out there and put these things in.
So we've accepted this roadway, but part of it.
Part of the roadways accept, I think it's only accepted as far as,
It's like 300 feet. It's the first town hall driveway near the roundabout.
oh, okay.
So
Independence is
not up
open,
to,
Not what's in front of the town hall.
Didn't
that has
they
not been
counter a
accepted.
number
Oh, okay,
for what
so
they
none
felt
of
the
that's been
remaining work
accepted.
was?
okay,
It's
well,
about $15,000 less or
Less
something. It was
than-
at least
less than the number.
15,000 is my, something like that.
So there's a strategy. So if they want to counter and make an offer, meanwhile on the backside, if we could be doing a calculation of the work we want to complete, we don't need to tell them that. But if we know how much we need to get to complete 3 crosswalks with thermoplastic versus 5 with brick, and we go to them and we say, we think you owe us 120, and they say, oh, we don't want to pay you 110. We know 110 can cover what we need to do, so why don't we just strike a deal?
Yeah, and we can, as long as we know ultimately what our end game is. What do we
But
want?
we don't have to share with them what our end game
Well, yes,
is.
you do,
Well,
because
we have
they
to
have
tell
the
them
ability.
what material
Yeah,
we
you have
want.
to tell them, because they can say, what, they wanna do the work. So Norfolk,
as part of
tell
our,
us what you want.
But
as
we don't
part of
want
our
them to do the
agreement,
work.
they
We're
give
in a
us,
negotiation. If part of this is we're in negotiation for money, based on work you have remaining to do, we're no longer willing to entertain you doing the work. We're only willing to entertain a cash settlement.
We don't own the roads.
Well-
We can't do the work.
Well, we can if we settle with them.
can we,
We'd have to accept the roadways in order to do the work ourselves.
can
We
we
can
hold a
if we
bond?
settle with them.
How long can they hold us up?
Well, I think
They don't
that-
even know where this town is anymore.
I think to a substantial extent, the ball is in our court, because what happened when we had these negotiations, we were talking about the work necessary to complete. One of the deficient items that was identified was the existing crosswalk. And I think we raised the point, well, we don't want you to put in this same crosswalk because it's broken apart in a matter of a few years. And they said, well, what do you want? And that's kind of where it
Well, and that puts
stopped.
them in a position of power because now we're
Right.
changing the rules of the
Right,
game.
and you know-
they
right,
can
right.
falsely escalate.
You know what I
In the-
wanna
but-
tell,
but-
you know what I wanna tell Stop and Shop? If they were very quick and eager to tell the town that it's going to be less money for this thermoplastic, so this is what we're willing to give you, What I want this board to tell them is that, oh no, it's gonna be actually more money, because that product, it's not acceptable to this town. And what this town is looking for is this flat cobble. Here's what it cost. So given that you were willing to give us less money for thermoplastic, I'm sure you're gonna give us more money for flat cobble. So cut us a check and everybody's happy.
But contractually, they don't have to.
They
Yeah,
don't.
I
but-
don't think you could
but-
really do that.
But that's
They-
a
they'll-
wonderful
do it.
negotiating, a place to start.
But
Okay.
they're gonna say, no, thanks.
And
Yeah,
that-
I don't think you have much to stand on there, because they're only required to do what they're required to do.
And
you
I
can't
agree
go
with
and then
you.
say,
But you have
Yeah.
to tell them what it is we want, and we haven't done that yet. We have to be able to tell them, because Steve is correct. We
See,
can't just do work.
I don't
on-
think,
If they had tenants, if they had any inclination on doing anything, if they wanted to sell some of their sites, it would be one thing. But they don't, and they don't care, and it's not actively being marketed. And 2 days ago, I spoke with their broker, who said maybe later on this year, these parcels might come up again. But they don't care.
Well, they sent.
They're playing with
They
us.
sent us a letter. They sent us a letter. Betsy, I don't know if that went to everyone. I assume it went to everyone. That they want this bond issue to be addressed. I mean, that letter came probably about a month ago. So that's one of the reasons why I asked that you put it on the agenda.
I think as soon as you tell them what we want to do, you lose your power
Right.
position. And you lose your negotiating position, because they're only gonna negotiate to what you wanna do.
Who were you dealing with when you were talking before?
It's an attorney from Goulston's and Stores.
What about a
Carmine
facilities guy
Tomas.
or
Oh, he was
a
there too.
contractor?
Oh, they were there too. They
Give
had
me
a
a break.
Well,
You know what? They've already wasted more money just having them in
right,
part
though.
of
If
it.
they want to start negotiating here, and we're going to start negotiating up here, then we'll probably end up at the cost of the bricks in the long
That's
run.
all we want.
We will never exceed it.
Yeah, I don't think.
That's all we want, is the cost to
Yeah,
complete
that's-
for the bricks. That's
yeah.
all we want.
But they're gaming us. They
We're
said,
not-
"Oh, you're going to save some money? We want it."
They're not gaming me.
Well,
Why, who are they gaming? Who are
They-
they gaming, Peter? They're not gaming the
they're
town.
gaming us. We don't have our sidewalks.
We still have a
It's-
bond. We still have a bond in place.
We want the sidewalks, and I don't want to have to discuss this,
So tell
again.
them what to do.
I just wonder if we have a position to go to them and say, we have lost our faith and confidence, we don't want you to do anything, we want the money so that we can do it ourselves, and negotiate that rather than.
When we accept the road.
And if they don't wanna,
Well, it's got no finish course on it.
rather
But
than the
it's in there, isn't
details
it?
of what we're doing or how many, just talk dollars, it's what it's all
Well,
about, is dollars.
Michelle, this is what we tried to do. This is what we tried to do. And they kept bringing up the thermoplastic, the cost. So unless we say, we're not using thermoplastic, we're using this other material, here's the cost of the other material, okay, here's the cost of the project. And like I say, I'd love to tell them that it's actually more money,
Right,
but you're
I-
okay with that, correct, that it's more money, they're gonna say, oh, no.
Right.
Okay, well then give us a check for
For this.
the brick.
Right,
If you're not gonna give us more money,
right.
we'll have to figure that out.
It's never
And
going to
that's the-
happen if
and
they're the
that's-
ones that are going to install it.
Well, then let them install it. And to your idea, which is a good one, Peter, let them put in the 4 instead of the 5, and we'll paint the 5th crosswalk.
I
We'll
thought
ask
we were
them to
down
paint
to
Well,
three.
we're down to 3, actually.
Whatever the number is.
Well, what,
But I
what
think
is
that
our
that's a good
breaking
idea, to
point,
get
though?
the 3 in there and paint that 4th one that's up by the parking lot.
But what's our breaking point? Do we have a dollar figure we'd be okay accepting lower than this?
Well, we can have that conversation, but they weren't close to the number last time. They were about
Is
$15,000
it Bob's
less.
recommendation to install the flat cobbles, and if so, is that the board's position?
I like the idea of the
I
flat cobbles,
love
and,
the
and
idea.
that's what the one that you think is the most resilient, right?
Let's
So-
put that piece to bed.
So as long as it's not an ADA issue, right?
Well, no, I forgot that he had the flat ones in there. I was thinking Nantucket cobble.
Yeah, the big hump.
The ones down by the fish pier.
They have some in
They're
a,
great.
little
they are.
Last
roundabout.
300 years.
Over in Foxborough, they have some over in a little roundabout that Bob
Yeah,
pointed
that's
out
not,
to me. I went
that's
by
not for
there,
foot
but-
traffic, and it's, a real poor installation.
Yeah.
Terrible. They'll wish they never did it.
Does, however, choosing cobblestone really hurt Bob and the town, because that's something we would wanna make as our standard everywhere, and it's just something we can't afford everywhere.
But isn't it limited to just these three?
I know, but I mean, in the future, as he's
But-
going to replace the ones that are around the Rotary and stuff like that, we would wanna keep it consistent with whatever we do here, don't we?
Yeah.
Sure.
But one of the things that,
Are we
it's
setting
a
a
different
fund that's
situation
gonna
out there,
precedent?
Michelle, because there's some salvaging out there in the town. It's hard to explain. I've already approached the selectmen on this, and we need to do something in the center of town. I just can't keep putting black asphalt in there. It's just not good to do.
Looks ugly, too.
Yeah, mostly. But, you already have the flush granite in place, and you already have the concrete base underneath it, so when we scrape the brick out, what I'm praying is we're gonna go out and dig a couple of test pits, that we have enough tolerance in there to get the kind of brick, cobble that we want in there.
Do you think it could be attainable, that you could potentially replace those with cobble?
We gotta replace them for sure, but hopefully with cobble. I'm hoping that there's enough space in there. The construction detail that I have here shows that it's a possibility. So in other words, what they did was they have a 4-inch wide curbing, it's 12 inches deep, and they put it in place across the road. They take the dirt out in between, and then they pour concrete up to 6 inches, I'm hoping. And then there's 6 inches for me to put a 4-inch cobblestone in. So the application is, with the research, and I've gone into YouTubes and stuff, is to get a Portland concrete in a mixer, spread it out like it's a stone dust, you know, an inch and if maybe 2 inches. Put the cobbles in it, professionals put the cobbles in right, and then they sweep the joints and then they water it. It's not mixed with water in the mixer, and once this powder goes down. So I guess what I'm saying out there, it's easier gonna be doing it out there than it is digging up through fresh asphalt. And by the way, it is finished asphalt out there. It's not,
Oh, it is?
yeah,
Because I just
Meeting
drove
House
up
isn't.
Meeting House, and
Meeting
it
House
was a
isn't.
mess.
yeah. A little bit of the way up Meeting House it is.
It's worth a try, Jeff. So, I'd support if you wanted to try and negotiate on the higher end and see if you could get them to this number.
Let's try to pretend, what's the judge gonna say? So you get in front of them, and they're gonna say, where's your approved, I think the judge would say, where's your approved drawings?
Right.
What was approved? The town knows through experience, and I don't think the judge is gonna say, put it in, we know it's gonna fail, but go ahead and put it in. I don't think anybody's that counterproductive that a judge would say that. They'll understand that we need a superior product. So I think that's where the issue's gonna be. What was approved? The only other issue that we haven't talked about is, they have some rights. They designed this so it would be appreciated by their properties. You know what I mean? They want something elegant and stuff like that. That's why they like it, and that's why they put the money up for this, is because they want nice-looking brick in front of their place. Well, they're not gonna get brick now, so you can't put
And I look
anything
forward
less.
to that conversation, because they haven't done with their properties what the town
Yeah.
has wanted them to do for a long
The
time.
other thing we may want to think about is the existing deficient crosswalks that are down at Independence.
Yeah.
We have a cost in here for fixing the brick with brick, which is going to break down again. But maybe that's something that we could say, you know, don't do anything to them. The town will repair those with cobbles on our own, just do the new ones or something. However you want to negotiate it, but what you're going to end up with is cobble crosswalks at Meeting House, and the next set down are going to be the brick that we have, hopefully repaired.
Now, how did we end up with this brick? Is this the brick that was picked by the state to do the original work when they were doing the roundabouts and everything?
I think it was the planning board back in the early 2000s.
No, I don't think the planning board picked out the bricks.
No, it was our design engineers.
Oh.
I know what you're getting.
No, well, Stop and
Someone
Shop
did.
installed the crosswalks on the unaccepted portion of Liberty Lane.
Yeah, and it's falling apart.
Yeah, and so their design engineer is the
Why,
engineer
was it
of
part of the
record.
tip?
Their design engineer only
PHP.
asked for our specs, so they could duplicate,
What you-
replicate
what
what's
was
existing.
done
So,
elsewhere?
I mean, they didn't put any thinking into it.
Okay,
Okay.
I got you.
So the tip actually gave us those bricks?
Paid for it. Butch hired,
You know, I mean, but really, I didn't realize that the paid for it.
Does this crosswalk here exist presently?
Yes,
This one.
yes.
Yep.
Yeah, those are all in.
This one.
They're all in up.
Use them all the time.
up to about here, the
Yep,
crosswalks are
that
in.
exists, this exists.
How do you come up with 3 when I count 9?
Well, Bob is correct with,
Total,
where
but
the,
left
but what
remaining.
happened was for various reasons, and it had to do, I think, with, some of it had to do with the reworking of the MBTA parking up there and such that.
But
I think it
is
was-
that all in writing?
Well, we'd have to go back, when we looked at this, a year ago, I think we were able to wrap our minds around it at that point, but it's been a year.
But I mean, again, if we sit in front of the judge, and he's gonna, where's the approved drawings? I don't wanna hear anything else.
Yeah,
This one was taken out by the board
yep, there's a note on it,
because it.
there's a note there.
It's a mid,
Yeah, but that's,
Mid-block,
I don't know if
right?
that's
One
an
of them is
approved
a
note.
Mid-block
mid-block.
crossing, that was
Yeah.
taken out. This is the one that Peter identified as something that could be rolled into the site plan approval. And he also identified this one as something that might be appropriate as a concrete sidewalk. So we end up with these three. And, the one here and the one there are already in. below
This
the
one here
deficiency.
wasn't that only supposed to be temporary, but after this development was done?
Yeah, it's.
you don't wanna
I
roll
don't
over
think-
brick.
I don't think it ever got formalized, but somehow the conclusion was don't put it in because it'll get destroyed by the lot construction, which is.
And this one was taken out on a handshake too, wasn't it?
Well, that's also,
I don't recall.
you know, like driving over a sidewalk, right?
Mhm.
Why wouldn't that be just cement concrete, like?
Oh, I don't know.
Apron.
You can argue it all you want. What was approved?
Then
Because two people
it's
are-
not that straightforward, Bob. Some of these crosswalks, there's been some changes along the way that, the board
They've been
has-
documented, you're right, yeah.
Well,
You have to go back to the.
I
drawing.
can't.
That one right there is not shown on the approved Stop and Shop site plan. I don't know how that one got there.
It's VHB.
Yeah, they're the same folks, but there's no entrance there.
I mean, those 3 crosswalks, Tom, if we focused on those 3 and had, consistency with the flat cobble for just those 3 to start with, I mean, in terms of the dollar amount and how that would contrast with the 5 with the brick, I mean, is that
Well,
comparable?
I don't know, we
Could do that
costed out the
calculation for
brick,
us, though.
and they're a little less than 2,000 apiece. As you can tell, they're a little different length, but crudely, an average 2,000. Did you get a good
But
price?
that's
on
the
the,
computation I think is important, because
Yeah.
that's our bottom line. We don't wanna go any lower
I
than
just-
that.
I did
We
it
may be
myself,
willing to
but,
go lower,
Mm.
as long as we can get what we need to finish
yeah.
those 3 in the material we wanna do it in.
It's probably close to the 5 with the brick.
It might be a little lower, but it'd be interesting then to have that, know where your bottom line is.
Well, I mean, what about this, is if we get what we need, and get the dollars, and then we offer a minor modification to the site plan, saying, we're putting in a nicer material on your roadway. It's going to be
I
what
looked at
we
yours.
think is gonna be a hell of a lot better than the
Coastal took
brick
a
that
shot
fell
at this too,
apart.
and you guys are pretty
And
close, I
at
thought.
that point, we'll,
the
you
only
know,
thing
we'll
that's in
recommend
here on
acceptance
the,
of this roadway.
Can we put forward a minor modification?
Well, we'd have to have them ask it.
The applicant.
Right.
Which we can orchestrate that.
Right.
I
I mean, the
think,
whole
but
idea
we
is,
have to
listen,
tell them what to ask for.
Listen, we
That's-
want these sidewalks done, you want this stuff done. How about this? We think this is the
Lumped it
best
together,
way
maybe?
to approach it, we'd rather spend your
Oh,
money
that's only
here.
thermoplastic
They may wanna
tank.
put them in themselves.
Which is okay,
It-
though,
it
as long
was-
as
As long
they
as
know.
it's what we want.
Yeah,
that's okay.
and
Exactly.
Right.
I guess the bigger negotiating point is, and we would like to entertain a minor modification, changing this, faraway sidewalk to something different, and getting this ready for road acceptance. Because you gotta remember something, they still have to maintain it. Bob, you bill them for that, right?
No. They,
yeah.
they have brick going out. We go up and we make sure it stays open and, but they got brick doing the plowing. Brick
Oh, okay,
landscaping.
so either way, they're paying for the maintenance.
Yeah.
I thought
For the
you-
plowing, you mean?
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
things like that. That's a cost that goes away for them. Must have been a pretty expensive winter for them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
I think we're getting close to a game
We have a
plan. I think
value-added
we are.
proposition
Get
for
Tom to
them.
run your numbers, and then that'll really tell you the story.
Okay, so Tom, maybe you could take a look at what each of these would cost in the cobble, the flat cobble.
I got the estimate right here.
Yeah. Oh, you do?
Yeah.
What's the number?
Cobble for one
You've been
brand new.
sandbagging us here, Bob.
I don't. About $14,000 new installation.
Versus,
For 5 crosswalks?
No, each.
versus what?
Each. As opposed to $2,000 each?
As opposed to 9,000 for brick,
Oh, 9,000 for brick.
roughly.
Okay,
using
so
round
9
numbers.
times 5 is 45 versus 14
Three.
times 3,
14 or 15?
which is 40,
Percentages, yeah.
42,
42.
43.
So
It's
it's a-
actually 14.5, so it's
So it's about the same.
Comparable.
And what is their perceived loss? This, and what else? This.
Is that a loss, really?
That's not really a loss.
I'm trying to think like Goulston stores will. These two.
Do you recall what we had proposed in terms of dollar value?
I think it went back and forth, and it kind of got a little fuzzy, because after we said we don't want the brick, I think then they came back with this rather confusing format of what they were offering us, which was thermoplastic.
Oh, we
And I
can
think
say we
that's
can
what
reach past that.
we rejected, and I'm not sure it got much beyond that point.
And I think that's what we could say, is we've been doing our research since then, we've been looking into it, seeing how other towns have held up, and we're just not comfortable enough with that application. This is the direction we wanna go.
We have a common goal, which is an attractive site.
Yeah.
This is how we get there.
Right.
Well, using Bob's number of 14,000, if we want 3 of them,
14.5,
that's-
14.5.
I'm
all
using
right,
26 feet across the street too as an average. I don't know
Yeah,
if
it's
you-
going to vary, but anyway, if you use 14,000 times 3, it's 42,000. We're saying 48,000 for 5. So if we're willing to settle for 3, it seems like it's pretty much
A wash.
yeah.
Plus
Correct.
painting the other one.
Correct me if I'm
Sure.
wrong,
Planning
Tom.
board can go do that on a Saturday.
How we approach this, and it
It's
was
pretty bad.
and it
I'm a
was
good
with
painter.
the board being involved in the process, at least leading up to the meeting. We came up, I think, with a higher number. We started talking about 9, right, and then I think during that conversation, we did eliminate some based on a review and as part of a negotiation, as it should be. So I think it might make sense just to give Tom and Bob an opportunity to review the plans and just make sure this hangs together before we go forward
Agreed.
with Stop and Shop.
And what
But
are the
that-
changes that are documented?
Yeah, maybe,
Also, is there anything else that we have to do on this before this would be an accepted road, Bob?
Before it gets, providing everything's done,
Well, I was just wondering, we're concentrating on sidewalk right now, but is
Right.
there anything else?
so we're concentrating on the crosswalks. The sidewalks have
Excuse
to
me, I
be
keep saying
ADA.
that. I
Yeah,
mean
know, I
the
did, I
crosswalk.
did.
but there
for a
is
while, too.
sidewalk work that we
Yeah.
need to,
They need to put
The other
another-
side of the street's not finished,
They
right?
need to
Right.
put another
Yeah.
panel in, to make it ADA compliant,
Yeah,
Tom
yeah,
pointed
that-
out.
they also owe us some landscaping work.
Yeah, around the transformer and around the
Is that all in?
whatever that. Yeah.
Because, I
Yes,
mean,
it
I
is.
think what we should do is go with an entire package of the crosswalks, the panel, the landscaping, the minor modification, and the acceptance all together and say, how about this?
Yeah, I agree with you. And we had a lot of those components last time around, except we didn't discuss minor modification, that aspect. We had everything else. The big thing that we didn't have is we didn't have the material of construction, which now, if we're all in agreement, we have that. And
I
that's
thought we put
huge.
that to bed.
We
We're
did.
not opening
We
that
have.
again.
We did.
We've put that to
But
bed.
that's-
Thank you.
Unless the architectural
the-
board tells me
That's the
no
key.
good.
That's the key, based
Right.
on the last negotiations we had with you. We gotta know what we want. Okay, I think we can work with that.
I keep asking this question and I never get an answer, but do we know who the handicap compliance officer is in the town?
Probably the building inspector.
There has to be a person that bears that title. I don't know who it is.
I mean, it'd probably default to
Usually
building.
a volunteer or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
But I don't
No,
know.
It's usually I've never seen it where it's not a working town employee of some sort. And
I know in
they-
North Attleboro, it's a guy in a wheelchair.
Yeah,
I would
Makes
guess
sense.
he's probably like,
a compliant,
yeah,
just a
the actual
officer.
compliance officer is typically, building inspector or somebody in the building-related end of things.
I'm
So-
pretty sure.
Ultimately,
Who is our Aquifer Protection Review Board?
I haven't asked that question, but
Do you realize that down in the Aquifer Protection District, that there's actually a 3-man board made up of a DPW person, a Concom person, and someone else, that whenever these issues are supposed to come up down there, they're supposed to go in front of that board. It's buried in our bylaws.
Oh, really?
So I prefer you not to bring up these extra boards.
I don't think we've ever sent anyone
I
to
hope
them.
it's not the
It's
chairman of
actually
the
in
planning
there.
board that's on that committee.
But believe it or not, some board positions better off left alone.
Okay.
I just raised the point because that person has a lot of power to interpret these regulations. And even if you talk to the ADA board, if our local compliance officer takes a different position, it could be problematic.
I mean, but aren't those standards basically pretty well laid out in AAB?
I don't know
it's
of
the architectural
anything
board, it's not the,
that would preclude you using them, but it's a hard traversable surface. It doesn't have the, like the extra half, anything above half an inch, it's gonna be relatively flush. I don't think they'd have a problem with it, but I agree with you, we need to make that contact, but.
there's 3 surface faces. There's the split, there's a thermo, and then there's a sawn. And I'm hoping we don't have to use the sawn because that's ultimately the most expensive.
It's also slippery when wet.
And it's slippery, right?
Yeah.
So I'm hoping we can use the thermo, as long as we, select, so order 1,000, 900 work, give them back 100, give me some more to choose from.
We're getting closer.
The last time that I was in Europe, I was actually looking at cobble, because I had this,
Was that you?
true story. And the biggest concern at that point is what's between the cobble. Not that they're gonna fail, but,
No.
what goes between the cobble. Is that concrete? I mean, these set in concrete? or
It's either
what-
mortar or concrete. What I've saw is, it's a concrete, it's a Portland mix. But the good thing is, it's repairable. As long as you can go out there, the cobble's gonna stay forever, so I have to go out there and point it every 3 years. There's a cost
Yeah.
of maintenance to everything.
In some of these locations I had seen in Europe, they actually used almost like an elastomeric, it's like almost maybe a repair strategy in between the
Like a
places on the
3-ply
cobble.
polymer, yeah.
So, but I don't know. I mean, these are old,
I just
back to the
searched one-
1400s, some of the.
I just did a general search on Google and came up with just a stone company, Monarch Stone International. They have a particular type of cobblestone, and it says right on it that they're ADA compliant, making it an ideal choice for commercial use. And then there's a variety of photos, what it would look like.
Yeah, great.
And they do all have mortar between them in those.
So, I think just through some general research, I mean, it's all, you want to find something affordable. This is just one search, but it looks like absolutely it's used in applications where it's.
You have, everybody's email, if I sent you a, you'd be fun watching what I can show you on, YouTube.
So
Find it
what,
yourself, but I mean,
what would it take to get this, I say to paper, but to get it to articulate the specification, the details, because before, whether it's myself or whoever from the board participates,
Yeah.
before we have that negotiation with them, we would want to be able to, because they're gonna ask.
Yeah.
Well, what do you want?
If they say, yeah, we're willing to
This is
do
what
it,
we
just
want.
tell
We
us
need
what
to
you
tell
want.
them.
yeah. Well, I can have, Phil, the guy, he's an engineer on a payroll. He put together, is that what you're asking? Can we
Yeah, a little
put together
Yeah,
a
whether you
drawing with
want to work with
text?
Tom, whatever is
yeah, Tom
appropriate,
could-
whatever you guys feel
Find
is
a
best.
stone, find the detail.
And then if
Yeah.
we can articulate, the crosswalks, specifically what crosswalks and the reasons that some other ones may be now going away. And I'm not saying that that's that important for Stop and Shop to know which ones are going, but we should know and agree on which ones are going away.
The strong position to start with Stop and Shop is we contact them and say, we've been evaluating for a while, here's what we want. and just assume they're
Nine.
gonna install it.
9 flat cobble crosswalk.
Yeah.
That's I can't
Well,
wait.
they
I
don't,
can't wait.
they don't have 9. It's, I believe, 5. So that, and they should recognize that it was 9, and that was cut down by the board for various good reasons. So their cost is lower than it would have been.
Still not gonna pay a dime more than
No, I know
what
that.
brick is.
I know that, but it's a nice negotiating.
It's a good
attitude,
starting
right,
point.
Steve?
It's a good starting point. Yeah.
Okay.
Here's the
Well, I
detail,
think you
install
were
it.
there last time at the 9, and they were arguing the 5. I think that was also another issue.
Yeah, they tried to walk us down the ladder, and I think we got so far, and then we said, enough. You know, so, okay. Anything else for us, Bob, while you're here? Anything else you need for us?
Anything going on up at Fern Ridge?
No, I don't know what you're allowed to talk about, what you want, but I think.
Well, because it was on the agenda, I think we can have some conversation about it. You know, we were prepared to entertain discussion with Wall Street as far as lot releases, and, you know, I'm just repeating really what transpired at one of our prior meetings a month ago, which had to do with the off-site mitigation and that the DPW, you know, that those unmet requirements, you know, need to be articulated and addressed in the form of surety, and you know, that's still a work in process between Bob and Wall Street, and so until that's further along, you know, there's definitely some considerations as far as lot release. I think that's the tact we took a month
It
ago.
has to do with splitting those bonds. Isn't that what it was? That we wanted to split the bonds so that it wasn't an inclusive bond, that there was certain things that were going to be covered by one of them.
Yeah, so it's not like anything exists presently, it's
Right.
that we wanted to keep these separate. Let's not confound off-site and on-site mitigation. Let Bob deal with the off-site, he's an expert in this area, and he knows what needs to be done, and then we deal with the on-site. So, I you know, I mean, there's still work to be done, and, you know, I know Bob's trying to get these issues worked through with Wall Street, and it's still a work in process. I guess that's the best thing I can say, but.
He's been agreeable. I mean, I shouldn't say, you know, that's a kiss of death right there. He has been every time I've talked to him. Then we get in front of you people, and it's like he doesn't even know my name. So I'm hoping that pretty soon. The last conversation I had with him was that, okay, I'm going to go get a bond. There was no argument. It was beautiful. We said, okay, bye. And I haven't heard back from him. He's not here tonight, so maybe he's having a hard time getting it, or that's for the off-site work.
Okay. Okay, yeah, we probably shouldn't go into too much detail
Yeah.
on that, but, okay. And, the Form K, you wanted to talk at some point about the Form K. Did you still have some outstanding, you know, and do a Saturday morning breakfast over the
Yeah, I
DPW,
mean,
right? Hey, you said you were buying, as a matter of fact, for the
Well, you
planning
know, it's
board.
springtime. You want to do it? I'd love to do that. I didn't follow up, and the offer's there. If we can meet some morning and see just how we work with one another, what we're doing with the inspections. If there's any questions, the way we're doing it, I'd like to formally have approved the revised Form K. That's all simple stuff. That's just a consolidation of things that we don't necessarily, you know, just taking out some of the writing that doesn't apply. And then just the procedures that we go through. I mean, I don't know if you understand what it is that we do when we go out and we inspect, and, you know, Tom does, he did it. And maybe things like, how much money you know what, I was looking at one of the warrants, and I think one of the warrants was passed that the planning board has money not to exceed $5,000 for inspection fees. Anybody familiar with that?
Oh, yeah, it was in there. It's just a
Why did
normal
it say that?
revolving account.
I wish I caught that.
I mean, I don't know, it's always been in there.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a default article.
Yeah, yeah, I remember it came.
Well, it seems to me like, you know, having done this for a while, and now especially in this town, that, you know, if you have a 10-lot subdivision that should have $10,000, about $1,000 a house is what it seems to be working out with in the end. That should go into escrow so somebody can pay so that the planning board can pay the testing labs and our inspection fees. And I'm not trying to be unreasonable, it's just the way it is. I think that's, Tom, it'd be more money, you know? But-
I think there's a lot of regs that we need to look at. Just like we've been constantly updating the bylaws. I think we just need to refresh some of the regs too. That's all. I mean, not necessarily remove, just maybe replace or update. I mean, just like anything, 20-year-old documents on germane.
Okay, and the other thing was with regard to Toils End subdivision, the Fox Run subdivision, there were some plans, I guess, where there was some interest in doing some things with groundwater that,
Right.
we had told them that it would be a problem and they would need to discuss it with the boards and such.
Are you clear on what that is?
Well, has that gone away?
I haven't heard back from them. We told them that the kind of change that I can make in the field changes, the smaller things, but when you're talking about discharging water or displacing aquifers to relieve water, you can't do that. It's totally contradictory to stormwater regulations and the new permitting, and we're all about recharge now. They want to take, just for instance, they want to put a foundation on the ground, they want to put a perimeter drain around it, and they want to discharge that towards the street to daylight. Just let it run over the grass and eventually into our storm system and discharge wherever it goes, a quarter of a mile down the street. You just can't do that.
So in terms of the state of the project there, I know they're still blasting and there's still all kinds of work ahead of them, but have they done much in the way of, foundation work over there? I mean, I just want to make sure it's not one of those things, rather, beg for forgiveness than ask for permission type thing. I mean, I don't want to get into that
Yeah.
with them. So do you know, I mean, whether this is something that really should have either gone away or should have come up?
I don't think it's gonna go away. I don't, because it's in Pulte's big business. It's in their specifications. They've done it over on the Rentham side. So I lifted the phone and I called Rentham. Rentham has a new boss over there now. And he's upside down about it. He can't believe that the prior superintendent let it go. Now a lot of them are in. He doesn't want to see any more go in, but it's, substantially complete over there. So
would it be appropriate for us to draft something to them? Maybe Tom could help us with this, because you had seen those plans as well, right?
Yeah,
Wait a second, what are we drafting? You're watching the
Well-
field stuff. I mean,
Well, no, he's not.
Well,
He's not
I'm-
dealing with foundations.
they came to me. Well, it is kind of like out of my jurisdiction, but it isn't.
But they
End
want to
result.
dump it onto the street.
yeah, but
Right.
but they came to you and asked.
They did. So the next
So
stage
just
is.
refer them to us here.
I don't, exactly.
We did.
There's no letter necessary. We just gotta say to them, hey, listen, get on the agenda with Betsy
Right.
and plead your case, because it's a little bit bigger than a field change. I'm not certainly gonna approve something like that.
So, well, let's wait for
I'll call them and make that then.
them. Right.
As long as we're paying attention, I have no problem with that. But if all of a sudden,
I mean,
the
I'll put it
starts,
this way, I mean, they have too much at stake, and, they're not a little operation, they know that,
Yeah.
we'll hunt them down. They're a
You
big
can-
target.
and I hear you, but look at where Rentham is right now. Now they're faced with X number of, foundations
Standards
that.
are a
Now,
little
I mean,
different than ours.
How
We
did
do a
they
lot
end
of
up
it
with
retroactive
all their
engineering.
foundations having high groundwater? How did they end up with that?
They don't. The foundations are up in the air, so they're probably not gonna ever have a groundwater problem, because they're blasting ledge as it is.
I mean, so what they're doing
It's a
is
standard
building
for
in
their
a French
building, no
drain.
matter what,
They're just building a French drain.
outside the foundation. When you put a French drain outside the foundation and the water goes up, you're taking that whole ocean of water and you're telling it to go somewhere else.
The
You get a
street.
hardship where the water's getting in the basement, you can call it a hardship, and maybe you can let that basement drain into a catch basin through a utility license. Something Bob Nicodemus is trying to get, a stormwater utility. You know what, you should just relax, pretend you don't know anything, have them come in and present what they want to, and that's all, and then you learn from the beginning. Pretend you know.
React to their requests, and
That's fine, as long as we're paying attention to it and what's happening.
No, I think that is germane though, because if you don't pay attention to it, they're just gonna do it. And someday we're gonna discover you get all these drains
Well,
draining across
if
the
they
sidewalk.
were just gonna do it,
so-
they wouldn't have brought it up to Bob. as
Yeah, I
permission.
wouldn't. They're not doing it. And I won't let it happen, even though it's a little bit.
Okay, good.
But they know they gotta come in here. I got a lot of things to do, and you do too, but, the ball's in their court, clearly. Why chase them to be good?
Okay.
And why chase them to
As
be
long as
right,
we're
you know what I
paying
mean?
attention, that's all, okay.
Now, doesn't the land slope down behind those houses? Can't they daylight it in the backs of the properties?
You're supposed to mitigate it right there on site. It's all about recharge. Stormwater regs are all about recharge, so
Right.
you don't wanna send it too far. The storm systems in the street are sized for impervious surfaces. That's the streets, the driveways, and even the roof drains should mitigate itself on the property. So to take an undetermined amount of water and throw it through a 10-inch pipe, how do you know you don't need a 50-inch pipe? So, first of all, it's wrong, and second of all, you can never size it right. A lot of stuff.
To have dry wells to recharge the roof water is kind of at cross purposes with taking the same water and outletting it on
putting
the
out
street.
onto the
Yeah,
street, yeah. Goes into the French drain.
it's a lot of construction that achieves.
So I'm glad I
absolutely
brought it
nothing.
up. I'm sorry, I brought it up at the same time, but, okay. We good?
Can I go home?
Oh, yeah. You can go.
No.
What is it? What, it's
Thanks.
only 10:30?
Hope I didn't ruffle any feathers with the other thing there. I was,
No, it's fine.
Um,
I'm
I
sure
came
you'll
in.
work it out with
Yeah,
them.
but water's so important that I need professionals to comment on it, and that's where we missed the boat on this.
Well, I
We
think-
were late, unfair to those guys.
But I think you're at an excellent point that they skirted the system and didn't follow the right process and protocol in terms of talking. And the letter clearly said the agreement of how it was gonna be paid would be worked out. There was no commitment that it was gonna be the town. So I'm glad that you raised both of those points, because it helped clarify it for me, so.
Which coffee shop did that take place? Because she might have been, if it was the Dunkin' Donuts, she
I was
may
probably
have
out in the street waiting in line.
might have overheard the conversation.
What's gonna happen in the end is, how sometimes you go in good faith of the contractor and you get hurt in the end?
Yeah.
Nobody ever goes on the good faith of and if they did, they'll find out, I'm a good guy, and we're gonna make this work. Probably cheaper than what they expected to do it for.
I know
You
you
know what I
will.
mean? We're gonna get a new road out of
Yeah.
it, but you can't let them just trench down the center of the street and have the taxpayer
Yeah.
flip the bill 5 years from now.
Yeah,
It's, so that statement, born into this stuff, I know, telling you.
Let them really consider if it's worthwhile for them to come back and fight with us over it. I just wanted to get the project
They're
through.
not gonna kibosh this at
No,
this
they're
point.
not.
And
No,
I'm,
they're not.
and I don't wanna put them over
And
the
I know you'll
barrel
be fair.
11th hour either.
That's why I told them that.
When,
no,
when,
no way.
when Four Kicks went in, no, it wasn't Four Kicks, when Joffran went in, they replaced the water main down 115, and they did the same thing, they patched it. And it was a mess for years. Years, that whole road was a mess, until the state came in and did the road over.
Well, just like Peter said, look at our center of a town. The bricks are falling apart, but now there's a trench going up. They're a gas company, and there's nothing we can do about it because they went and they've got legislation to allow them to leave it the way it is. Look at Campbell Street, That's what, Campbell and Seekonk. That's where the street falls apart first. Streets are made like a grain of wood. Once you start going against that grain and filling it with a material that wasn't built with originally, it falls apart there. It just works out that way.
So you recovered from the winter, Bob? I'm sure it wasn't an easy winter for you, I'm sure.
Just the last 2 months.
Yeah, town meeting.
He's out there
and
cutting the
budget
arborvitae behind the
process.
building here.
'Cause you got a lot of changes with personnel going on, you got a lot of stuff going on, so anyway, you have our support, Bob, you know that,
Right.
so.
Yeah. I'll try not to let you down,
Oh, I know you.
Nothing
Thank you,
but
Bob.
honesty, that's
Thanks.
it. See you later.
See you,
Thank
Bob.
you.
Have a good night.
Oh, by the
Bob.
way, I spoke with Bob, and he said that he's willing to talk to Mr. Borelli about the speed limit signs for
Oh.
Freedom Trail.
Yeah, you
Because
mentioned that to me.
He said that he could probably negotiate with him, because he says he has a bunch of signs already.
Meeting house.
A meeting house, sorry. Yeah, meeting house.
I was
So he
thinking
says he
Freedom.
has signs, and he can just pop them in if he gets permission from them to put them in.
So who makes the recommendation as far as the speed limit, the chief?
Well,
Police chief,
we
or-
would make a recommendation. The chief would like it as slow as you can get it.
As
He would
long-
like it at 15 miles an hour, I think, if he could get it. But I said,
I know.
Boy, that could be
I'm all
cool.
for
I've never been able to set a speed limit
I
before.
know, I like that too. Can we do that with more roads in
The roads
town?
are in binding condition, all the structures are raised. Drop it to 15, they're gonna go 20, 25 anyway, so.
That'll become quite the revenue source at 15 miles an hour.
I know, I've never seen a 50-mile-per-hour sign.
Oh, there is one.
Yeah.
Well, they have
Right here in the town.
Well, that'll be maybe
Down
the
hill.
last
Been
thing
blown
that gets
by and I
decided
haven't
is what
seen
the
it.
number should be on the
Well, let me know.
sign. So,
I-
but everything else is fine. I mean,
Yeah.
please, but that'll be the last
Yeah,
thing. Give us some
the
time to
yellow
figure
one.
out what the
Yeah.
number should be, how to
To get
manage.
You know, it's a private road, he can
The 85th percentile
do
speed.
what he wants there, you know?
Right.
Speed study. But
I could put up a sign, you know, just an indication of,
nobody knows.
you know, the word slow, might
Right.
help, you know? It's not a speed limit, but,
Well, obviously Chuck must be getting calls, so.
yeah.
he must be.
Whatever you wanna do. Have a good
All
night.
right.
See you.
Bob,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Bob.
See you.
Are we done?
No.
Oh.
It's not 11 o'clock yet.
All right.
12.
11 only applies to town meeting, Walter. We can't
So-
sign anything after 12.
The next item of business is the board reorganization and associate member appointment. So,
Have
you
we
know,
looked for an associate member? Have we put out?
Greg has expressed interest in maintaining his association.
As did Andrew.
yeah, those are basically the two people I'm aware of that.
How
have
many
expressed
associate
interest.
members can the board have?
One. Because the associate member in a pinch can vote if they've been at all the meetings.
Then let's have them in.
It's a joint appointment, correct, with the
Right.
Board of Selectmen?
Oh, yes, it is.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be made tonight.
No, it
Have them in.
doesn't.
We're
Yeah.
not under any gun.
Yeah. I think that's a good idea.
And Greg wants to remain as associate.
Yes,
Yeah.
I believe he's put a letter in.
Maybe it's a good time we can set our next meeting. You wanna do that
Yep.
at this point?
Mm-hmm.
We should go out, 3 weeks? Because we want to make sure that DRB has a chance to look at those plans.
I need to recover from this week with 2 nights of town
Oh,
meeting and a
God,
plan.
yeah.
FYI, I'm not available for
Which is
I
3
mean, I
weeks
think
from
you're gonna
tonight.
see these guys turn this around a lot
Try
quicker
the-
than 2
that
weeks.
Tuesday, the 28th.
You think?
Yeah. You know, they've turned everything around very quick. Say we just gone for the 23rd and then,
The 6th could be a problem for me. You've got the
Sixth.
holiday week, I don't know, but that's not necessarily a problem for me, but it might be for others, the Memorial Day holiday's coming up.
Well,
We try that
before
Tuesday
the
after
Memorial
the
Day
28th.
weekend. Now, who said that they can't make it the 30th?
Betsy.
The 29th? That's you?
We do the 28th, that Tuesday. I know, it's the day after the holiday.
that'd be fine with me.
I'm available.
Yeah, I'm
Gives them a little
available.
bit more time than 2 weeks, but it's
28th
not quite
works for
3
me.
weeks.
Right.
Actually, with the holiday, it really is whole 2 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks and a day.
But, I know these guys, they're gonna be pushing to get this.
Do we have anything for Gino that we're aware of at this point?
No.
you. I
No.
don't have anything that I have.
Yeah.
Do you think, I know Peter thinks they're gonna forge ahead pretty quickly, but it would really, with the holiday in there, it only gives them 2 weeks and 1 day. He needs 2 weeks, plus he needs to review it with Tom before he's gonna get it to us, so is it too soon? I mean, I'm willing to do it, but we could tentative.
Well, why don't we set it up?
Yeah.
If for
and
some
then we can-
reason
we can set
nothing
the
fills
next
up
day.
because we haven't added anything else to it, right? You can always put it off.
So
Yeah.
go ahead with the 28th?
Yeah, because it's not a hearing.
Yeah.
So we don't,
Which is
Right.
me.
it's not going to be,
And there's no one else asking to come in right now.
and we're not going to schedule anything else. Right, Betsy? We're not scheduling anything else for that day.
Associate members,
Yeah,
my
associate members
candidates,
could-
right?
Well, we have to coordinate it with the Board of Selectmen if we're going to have them come in, right? Because it's a joint appointment,
That would
right?
be, it'd be ideal, I think, to have us all in the same room for it.
Okay,
So
we
we
could give them-
propose it. I don't know that that's a necessity to do it together, but that would be first.
But would they
prize.
normally just give them, would we normally give them a recommendation or something?
No, we give them a
No?
vote.
A vote, and then
We
they
vote
do
and they
their-
vote.
And then they do their own separate
Right.
vote. So if they wanna bring them in, they would bring them in?
Yeah, I mean, it might be easier just to have all of us get together
Yeah,
at one
if
time
it's-
and,
Right.
If it's possible.
Well, again, we're not in the gun for an associate member.
That's
Because
true.
we don't have any site plans going on.
that's very true.
So why don't we set that date, and we'll see if in fact that can be part of the business. And if it can't be, we decide we don't want it, well, the people aren't available, the candidates, then we can always revisit
What do we
the
talk
date.
about, the 28th?
Yep,
Yeah.
Tuesday
Yeah.
the
So at
28th.
least
And
we'll-
you know what, to be honest with you, isn't that Tuesday when the selectmen normally meet?
Yeah, they usually do meet on Tuesday.
So it could dovetail with that.
Yep,
Yeah.
Yeah, with the holiday week, I'm not sure they'd be meeting that week, but
Right,
might.
that's fine.
Okay, so 7:30 on the 28th of May. Okay.
Who's the other candidate who wants to be?
Andrea.
Oh, Andrea, okay.
Greg.
And Greg, okay.
Okay, I guess that might be the first item of business or the first activity for the chairman of this board, the chairman going forward, which is, I guess, the next item of business. And when I say the first activity, an item of business, it might be appropriate for the chairman to interface with the chairman of the Board of Selectmen to try to work through those details, so. You know, as you know, I've been chairman for about 2 years now, almost exactly 2 years. And it's been an interesting experience. I've learned a hell of a lot, I can tell you that. And you know, I think I'm better off for it, having met with a lot of people and been presented with quite a few situations. But, you know, whatever pleases the board.
Well, I
Is
think
certainly-
last year when we did the reorganization, we seemed to all agree that we should go back to a rotating schedule. I believe that was what we discussed. So in that light, you know, given the history in the board, I think I'd like to make a motion for Steve McLean. He's the longest serving member on this board as next year's chairman.
Well, thank you, Peter.
I'll second that motion.
Steve, and, you know, despite the fact that we like to war it out, like I say, we eventually work it out.
Yes, we do.
Right, so, I grew up with 10 brothers and sisters, so I'm used to fighting. Don't take it personal. I don't.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded.
how do you feel about that, Steve?
Fine with me,
Yeah.
fine with me. I obviously will not spend as much time in town as Jeff did. He's spent an extraordinary amount
Yeah.
of time
Yeah,
during the day.
yeah,
I just don't have the opportunity to be able to do that, but, you know.
You don't work in town, right? You work out of town.
I work in Boston,
Yeah,
so
right, yeah.
there's no way that I can
Yeah.
make a lot of those morning meetings here that are scheduled, but,
And
I
Walter,
mean, we
you-
do have these guys to be able to, you know, go to a lot of those meetings to represent us.
And Walter, I mean, I'm not familiar with your daily schedule in terms of how much time you spend in town, but are you in town on a regular basis, or?
Yeah, I'm not working, I'm retired, so I have
Okay.
some time.
Oh, so you can represent the board with a
Well,
lot of these.
that's-
And I'm not abdicating, you know,
Right,
that.
you
I
can-
mean,
oh,
I can certainly help. I mean,
I gotta learn how to spell planning board before.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm in town as well, so I'm in town more than I'm not in town. So if there's an issue that comes up that, you know, is crucial, while we appreciate your efforts, Jeff, and I'm sure it was an interesting learning experience, a lot of the things, I mean, you did a yeoman's work, but, you know, I think you almost kind of expanded that position, you know, to your liking, which is fine. I mean, you know, the position is what you want to make it out to be, but I don't think a lot of it needs as much as the hand-holding as it necessarily does. That was your personal style, that's all.
But then, of course, there were a lot of really important issues that came up in this past year, that it was good to have somebody there.
Right.
And, yeah, there were several significant ones.
Well, you know, as not the newcomer anymore, but up until today, the newcomer, despite the additional time you spent, I've appreciated your leadership style. There's been a lot of contentious moments at the table, and I feel like you've had a style that's helped keep things, you know, calm and back on task with our agenda. And so I've really appreciated your leadership style. And
Well, I
I know
appreciate that.
outside of
Thank
that
you.
you've done a tremendous amount of work, but I think at the table that you've been a wonderful asset. So
I appreciate that.
we can be a pretty unruly group sometimes. I know people think we're
Herding
better
cats.
than,
Well,
better than cable at times.
As I said, you know, I submitted a statement at candidate night, and basically what I said is I really do believe that having a diverse group of people and different ideas, perspectives, experience, I do believe that you get a better result. It may take longer and it may be a bit more painful, but I do think you get a better result, and I believe that we've had some pretty good results in, you know, certainly in the last year. I mean, you look at the projects that, you know, are moving forward, and I'm not suggesting that that's, you know, that's a result of me as an individual. That's a result of the board coming together, and I know in some cases, you know, we've moved away from our individual paradigms. I've done that. And I know, you know, each of us that have been on the board, we've kind of moved off of, you know, a place where we've been in the past, and I think the town has benefited from that. And so I think we all should be, you know, willing to do that going forward, continue to change as the demands change, the needs of the town change. And I think if we commit to do that, each and every one of us, we're going to continue to be successful. So I appreciate all the support, you know, the past 2 years. I mean, it's been a long haul. 2 years is a long time to be chairman of this board. So I welcome, if Steve is the candidate, we haven't voted, but I've seconded the motion, so clearly I support your
And
chairmanship.
thank you.
You gotta vote it, though. It's a
Okay,
legal.
motion has been made, motion has been seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous, Steve. Congratulations.
Yes, sir, congratulations.
I'm not
Peter, do
lightening
you
up.
have any interest in being vice chairman?
I mean, you know what, in your absence, I suppose it would probably be wise, because I am in town, and I'll gladly do it. You know, I think I have the time this year.
Well, I'll make a motion for Peter Chipman to be vice chairman. Do you have a
Second?
Motion's been made, seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Now, the last one always goes to the newest one.
Right.
I think I had been here for more than one meeting before you sicked it on me.
I don't think Betsy is gonna let Michelle leave the clerk's job.
Oh, I don't know.
She has been her personal favorite, she said.
So is the current clerk
Over
gonna
2 boards
nominate
over
the-
15
the-
years.
The next clerk?
I don't have a problem doing it. Betsy
Oh,
does
would you
all
like
the-
to be clerk
Betsy
again?
does all the work, but as a newcomer, it's a nice role to take too, actually, because you kind of get to reflect
What are-
on everything a second
What are the
time.
responsibilities of the clerk of the?
Really,
of
the only things I've done is to review the meeting minutes and provide any edits or comments to them. Betsy generates them, and so really it's just giving your comments and edits.
And the clerk
And then
always
otherwise
reads
you read
the hearing.
public hearings prior to them
I've
starting.
seen you do that, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And then
And that's, I get a lot of practice because I read bedtime stories to the children, so that's why my reading is so superb.
That sounds like a motion.
Wait a minute, that sounds like,
Sounds
That sounds like an emotion.
wait a minute, sounds like Betsy's coming up with a couple of other duties. What is it?
well, the annual report, which I usually draft. And,
Oh, okay,
I'll
all right.
provide as submitted, so
Yeah, so it's,
that's really about it.
yeah.
Well, if you'd like to retain the responsibility, that's fine. If you'd like to give it up.
You could make a
then-
motion for her
that-
to retain it
No,
if you
no,
want to.
I don't want to do that.
We can give Walter a shot if he's.
Yeah,
if
I'm
he's-
fine with passing the baton.
Fair enough, okay.
You gonna make the motion?
Sure, I will move to elect Walter as the new clerk.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion?
From my sins, right, yeah.
Actually, I'm not sure. Are you the chairman or am I the chairman?
Well, you're gonna finish out the night.
Okay, thank you.
One thing I want to suggest is Walter did some incredible work this year on the zoning bylaw study committee as well as the EDC. And given the fact that you're chair, Steve, I would like to make a motion that Walter be our representative on the zoning bylaw study.
Well, it doesn't change until January, right?
That's true, it doesn't.
December.
Change.
But we can always reorganize it. I just think that these guys are planning on going right into it for the fall.
Right, but he's already got a position. He's got a position on there right now. So we don't reorganize until
And you're still
January.
our
And- yeah.
associate
But-
So we can have two members.
That's fine. I
Yeah.
mean, I just don't want to lose Walter's talent because he picked up working with Bob this year quite a bit on moving that forward. And he stayed with the details right up to town meeting floor this year.
Painfully so.
Right.
And they all passed?
No.
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 3 out of 4.
Oh.
4 out of 5, excuse me, 4 out of 5.
Which one didn't pass?
The
The
32.
density.
The density one.
Oh,
The density one, yeah.
so the rezoning did
Article,
pass. Of
Article
the,
12.
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
There's somebody put a sign in front of
I
my
saw that.
house.
Oh, is that your house?
Well, my-
I saw
It's
a
in the-
house
it's in
on
the no
King
man's
Street.
land
On King
between
Street, I saw
my
it on
house
King
and
Right,
the house
and I
next
never
door.
drive on that
What
street
are you
just to
on
go to
King
town
Street? Is that
meeting.
where you live?
Yeah.
It was
you
a
know where that
paper
curve is?
sign.
I have,
Yeah, I
that's
saw
my
the sign.
property where it was in front of.
What did it say?
So-
Vote no on Article 12. And I drove by it on my way to
You know,
town meeting and I went,
The
"Who
sad
put
thing
that
is, all
out
that's
there?"
doing is giving a death knell to commercial development because the numbers, you need
They
the,
don't work.
right.
Right.
No one's gonna
Well,
just throw up something on spec.
We have, on that regard, we've all worked to make commercial development happen here in Town Center, and we've had a defeat, but let's not give up. There's gotta be Plan C. If that was Plan B, there's gotta be Plan C, and
Yeah,
we'll figure it
Which
out.
is why
then.
we want you on
The
it.
easiest way to do it is just next town meeting, do it again. Just don't take such a big jump. Don't double it. Do 50% more, and then after that's been accepted,
Yeah.
you go for another
sense.
jump. And you end up where you want it to be,
Yeah, I see.
but
I see, yeah.
you don't make it so scary. I think that because it was defeated by a lot.
It's called being
Oh, it
nibbled
was
to
2-1
death.
the other way.
Nibbled to death. by a
Right,
duck.
right. I
was like
think it was even more.
51-24.
Yeah.
So the 2/3, it got to 2/3, just the wrong way.
Wrong way, yes, it did, yeah.
People got afraid of the numbers. They just they got afraid of the numbers.
I hope
So I think that if you do it a little more incrementally, it might take a year to get it through, but
I'll tell you the next nut that we really need to crack, and you started poking at it, was Stop and Shop. We've got to crack that nut, guys and ladies. We've got to do it. Somehow, embarrassment through PR, we've got to join with other towns where this is happening, and I believe it is happening in other towns in the state.
Land
We've gotta do-
banking,
Pardon me?
the land banking.
Yes, we've got to break this nut. I mean, 10 years so far, this is ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Betsy and I pulled the original special PMLD application.
Uh-huh.
And it was submitted to start the process, because you created the PMLD before you ever did the site plans. And started the process in 1999.
that was with Borelli.
He filed the original PMLD, right? 1999.
I actually sat in a meeting with the selectmen, I don't know, 8, 9 years ago, and listened to the Stop and Shop executives lie to us.
Well, remember when somebody, as a joke, put her on the sign, Stop and Shop coming 2011, and it seemed like so far away, and now
Right.
it's 2013.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. That was almost insulting.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the interesting thing is this, is if it's so unattractive, then why did they spend the money and tie it up? Okay? The site.
It is attractive.
The point is this, is it is attractive. They don't have, I was touching bases earlier this week with Gino and Tom on this issue, and I think all their permits are gone.
if there was no extension, I know the site plan expired in February of 2008, before the Permit Extension Act, so.
Right. Don't be selling the extension for a few cobblestones, first of all, whoever goes there. But neither here nor there.
I mean,
I think,
the strategy that the town of Connecticut used is a good strategy and it worked, but it's expensive. And
It
that's,
would be, that was Bridgeport. They are much bigger than we are.
right, and they got deeper pockets, and we
Yeah.
can't afford to do that, so we gotta come up with an alternative strategy, or strategies, and I don't know what the heck it is, but by God.
Bridgeport had to,
When they, they did a taking
They
for
formed
a
an
development.
economic development commission.
oh, no, no, you're thinking of Groton, Connecticut, wasn't it?
Groton, I thought it was Bridgeport.
And they went ahead and took it by eminent domain.
They took, you mean when they took all those properties and houses? I thought that was in Groton.
You're silent on this issue, Jeff.
Well, no, it's just
Oh,
because
thanks.
it's 11 o'clock
We
and
have
that
a motion on the
issue is,
table.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, there is.
that's a big
Sorry, we
There is a motion
we
on the table.
digressed here.
You
There's a
maybe
motion.
public relations, maybe
Okay.
embarrassing them a bit or something.
All those in favor?
Walter's not paying attention. This is exactly when we want to vote.
Yeah,
on
that's
this.
right. Yeah.
It's too late, I'm already
These
doomed.
things that we're
I'm
supposed to
already
sign.
doomed, I know.
Jeez, how did
Okay.
how did I not see these go by? Oh, she started them over
Yes.
there.
Okay, so
Sign something. Here,
motion's
I
been
don't-
made and
I don't
seconded.
need
Any
one of
further
these, Betsy.
discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
What was that motion? I mean,
It was Walter being the clerk.
oh, yes, got it.
Took us that long to get.
Okay.
Okay.
So, Steve, you can pick up the ball as far as the associate member and how to
All right,
work
I'll
the
see.
interview process with the Board of
I'll-
Selectmen and such,
I'll
right?
contact the new chairman of the
Yeah.
Board of Selectmen
Well, you both, yeah, there you go.
and see if if they are meeting on the same night that we're meeting. That might be a perfect opportunity. We may be able to squeeze it into a window
Agree.
right in that same night. All right, this is. Did you sign this?
I haven't
For the
signed
site plan?
anything tonight.
Well, this one only needs three signatures, so
Oh,
you
really?
You don't need that one. No, it goes back to that.
Back to Betsy, okay.
Thank you.
Wells Fargo for years. Oh, wow. So then what you're not gonna buy that.
I don't know which pile's mine and which pile's yours. Oh, this is definitely not mine, this is yours. Oh, I think this all might be yours. Yeah, this is all yours.
That's for, some of this is for what didn't take place because of the request to postpone. Did you, you all set?
I signed it.
Yeah, there's 4 signatures on there, right?
Oh, that's your signature, okay. I couldn't read it. Sorry. Okay, so Betsy, you're okay with just one meeting out the 28th, and then we'll just deal with it going forward, because we don't have a whole lot of business anyway,
I have
right?
a couple projects I am expecting to come in, meeting public hearings, but.
Okay. Anything else?
I think this is something that we're gonna have to address sooner rather than later, because we did give a conditional approval on the car wash, but we're gonna have to decide whether.
For the driveway?
We're gonna, well, not so much the driveway I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about the, long-term enforceability of our orders of conditions.
Oh, I know.
So, just something to think about. You know, it's a serious consideration, and we are an elected board. We make our rules, and I don't think they should be abridged by arbitrary decisions of other boards. So, something to discuss in the future.
You're right. I agree with you completely on that. I'm really upset about the fact that we're being ignored on these things, and that we don't have any ability to enforce these things ourselves, because we can't levy a fine.
There may be other remedies, and we can discuss it in the future.
It is
Okay.
true.
Okay, is that it, folks? Okay, very good. Motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second, yeah. Third.
Okay, no further discussion. This meeting has been adjourned.